We had Nick Marotta on a second ago. What happened to Nick Marotta? He left us.
I see him in the list.
He was on screen. All right, so...
Well, all I can see is Ron myself, but I could be having a problem here.
Okay.
There we go. Got it now.
We're live. And hello, everybody. We're going to go ahead and start the intro here in just a second. But yeah, we're live. We're on the air. So let's get ready to kick off CoCoTALK episode 85. Here we go.
This is CoCoTALK, the world's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy Color computer. Streaming live on YouTube and Roku, available as a podcast and enjoyed the world over. And now, here's your host.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I am your host with the most. My name is Grant Leedy. Just kidding. It's Stevie Stroh here again for another exciting episode of CoCoTALK. We are on episode 85, and we are going to talk about one of Nick Marenti's favorite operating systems in the entire world. And why is this his favorite operating system? Because it offers ease of use. That's right. So this is a very special episode where we're going to talk all about OS-9. And one of our special guests with us today is, and I'm going to, Allan, help me pronounce you just told us a minute ago, but I don't want to screw it up. Help us pronounce your name again, Allan.
Yeah, it's Allan Batteiger.
Allan Batteiger, who you are the current CEO of Microware, correct?
Well, general manager. It's a partnership.
Okay, general manager of Microware. So thanks for joining us, Allan. We also have on the program our resident Apple guy, Mr. Mark D. Overholzer. Ron Delvaux is the procurer of celebrity guests. Ron's the guy who gets all the big stars on the show. Ron just rubs elbows and with all the A-listers. So thanks, Ron, for lining this up for us again. So Ron Delvaux is with us, a guy who knows a thing or two about OS-9 himself from O Canada. We have L. Curtis Boyle on the program. Good afternoon, hello, Curtis. From sunny Southern California, a guy who's done a thing or two with OS-9 himself, I believe. Mr. Steve Bjork is with us.
Hey there, everybody.
We also have with us, speaking of celebrity hobnobbing, this guy has rubbed elbows with the 8-bit guy. Brian Weisler is with us today. Hello, Brian.
Hello.
We've got a guy who could probably optimize OS-9 a little bit. James Diffendaffer is with us. And last but certainly not least, the biggest fan of the OS-9 operating system on the planet, Nick Marenti's from Australia. G'day, Nick.
G'day, everyone.
And so we are here, and I don't even know where to begin, but we usually start off the program with a little weekly update, product updates and acquisitions. And I know, Curtis Boyle, your project update is probably going to be talking about Beta 2 for the OS-9 Ease of Use project, correct?
Yep. Yeah, just got that released last night. As usual, I got too busy with real life stuff and I didn't get as much in there as I'd like, but there's some major bug fix or two, some speed ups, particularly if you have a 6809 system, so Barry should be happy with that.
There you go.
Wait for some people to pound on it a bit and give me reports back if they find any bugs, etc. But so far the feedback's been pretty good on Facebook and email and on the list.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I've actually downloaded it. I've installed it. It's on my CoCo, and we can show it off today. I can be the show. You can be the tell if you want. So you can guide me. Me being a fairly novice user of the system, we can show it from. Actually, I'm going to do when we get to that part. I'm going to reboot my CoCo right now. So we're going to show the whole process of what it's like to boot it straight from the SDC into the prompt, so we can see the whole startup time. Now, has anybody else, anything exciting happened this week? You guys pick up a new piece for your collection, work on a project, anything like that?
I picked up something.
What do you got there, Ron?
I got, this here was at the Target store.
Okay, a Donkey Kong air freshener.
Air freshener, yeah. Anyone can get it. It's $3. Can you believe it's $3?
Now, what is the scent of that? Is it banana scented, or does it smell like?
Does your room smell like donkey now?
Air freshener.
Air freshener.
It's all it says.
It doesn't tell you what fragrance it offers, huh?
No.
Excellent. So Ron got a new A new
I didn't
donkey.
get it. I just took a picture of it. It was $3. Way beyond.
Okay.
Looks
You've
like
got-
it cost them 10 cents to make.
I'm sure at least 3 cents went to licensing.
Maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Now,
Excellent.
on the other side of the spectrum, I've got Ed's new Mega Mini Multi-Pack. Boy, that doesn't roll off the tongue right. But still.
Ooh.
Well,
Okay.
actually, it's in Southern California. I've traced it down that far. It was supposed to be here yesterday, but we know the weather can get a little nasty and it's delayed U.S. postal shipments. But it is somewhere in Southern California, so I'm anxiously waiting for that to show up.
Excellent. You ordered that last week when we were on the air going over his website to see how many remaining.
Yes, I was saying it was it's looking a little bit like Christmas.
So we did a public service. We showed off the Zipster Zone website. He had 3 units remaining. Steve York purchased 1, so and it's on its way. So
Yeah, I took a third of the stock, yes.
much like Diego has 100% stock in the switcheroo in Uruguay. So
I wonder
They
how
call 3 are
much.
sold out now, don't they? Aren't they?
They are sold out, yes.
they're
He's
sold out.
also sold out on the SDC, too.
Oh, okay.
Well, that was quick.
Yep.
Hey, Alan.
We're stock.
It's the Christmas season.
Alan, do you know how much stuff that we've added to the color computer after a few years? Like we have an SDC that we can load up with a whole bunch of software, and we have new multi-packs that are small. We have new games that are made in cartridges. We have all kinds of neat new stuff.
Yeah, I've sort of kept about half an eye on the group on Facebook and I guess it was an email list or something. Anyway, yeah, I've kept about half an eye on what's been going on with the 6809 stuff. Was it Boise? Yeah, I guess Boise contacted me about 5-6 years ago when we purchased the Microware IP to see what kind of issues that we're going to be using the OS-9 as part of the NitrOS-9 name and things like that. And that's when I found out y'all were still in existence. So I sort of have been keeping half an eye on you for the last 5-6 years now.
Excellent.
Cool.
The thing that amazes me the most is how they're on the 20 annual last CoCo Fest. I mean, this show just won't die.
27 or 28, I think we're on now.
Yeah, it's just like, they said, no Rainbow Fest. Well, we got to have one more time. 27 times.
Yeah.
We've had way more than Rainbow Fest's ever had.
Yeah.
It's
Watch
amazing.
for 3.
And there's brand new 2 megabyte upgrades for the CoCo. So, on the NitrOS-9 running with 2 megs is just like, it's more than most people probably imagined back in 1986, so incredible stuff. Anybody else have anything new they worked on this week? Nick Marentes, any update on Rupert Rhymes or Funstar or anything?
Did a bit of looking around for the Rupert Rhythm was my first CoCo3 program, so there was a few things which were a bit dubious in that, and that because of that, it doesn't work very well under VCC and I think MAME. So I've been trying to track down what it was that I did way back then that caused problems. So I think I found a few areas. The way I handled interrupts and the way I handled a few keyboard scans were not standard. They seem to work on a real CoCo, but the way I've done it from back then when I was trying to learn all the new I/O of the CoCo3, obviously I didn't do things too right, and VCC and MAME seem to not like it. So I'll get around to fixing that all up. The only other news I have is I now have another CoCo3. I bought one off eBay, paid including freight $240.
Not bad.
So I got it as a spare, another spare. I've got about 3 of them now.
Was that just the computer itself, or was that including some
The computer? It came with a cassette player as well, but mainly the computer.
Is it a PAL one or is it NTSC?
It'll be a PAL one, yeah.
Okay.
Now, does do the memory upgrades, are those compatible with both versions? They have the same RAM connector, so you could do the Boomerang board and upgrade it to 2 megs. To run your favorite operating system, NitrOS-9.
Well, I actually have another. I have two NTSC CoCos. One of them's already been modified with a power supply. So this one, I'll probably swap the power supply into it so I can get my other NTSC one up and running. The power supply seem to be interchangeable, so I just have to take the transformers and just swap them over. And an NTSC one running on a power system works well. So yeah. I'll probably end up doing that because I prefer to develop using the most common CoCo platform, which is the NTSC one, just to get the correct timings and all that. And to see that wonderful composite colors.
No, yes, right. Yes.
How does that work when you go back to the PAL one? It's of course runs slower.
Well, yes and no. The PAL one runs at 50 hertz, so it is a bit slower, but you can put a PAL one into 60 hertz mode and it runs fine.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Well, that's true because your modern monitors don't care, so you can just kick it.
Yeah, they don't care. The modern ones are all resync. But by default, because the ROMs are PAL ROMs, they boot up by default in 50 hertz. And by default in RGB color mode because we, so I mean that's a good thing, but I prefer to have a system which is common to what most people have, which is the people in the US. So yeah,
and Canada.
I prefer it. And Canada, that's right, yeah. But
excellent. All right, now, so Allan, it's Batteiger, did I say it right? Batteiger. Okay, I was warm. All right, so we're gonna you were kind enough to number one join us, so thanks for joining us. And then you also said you maybe give us a little miniature biography for your history with microware or just in the computing industry or whatever. So feel free to now play This Is Your Life.
Well, I've been in the computer industry since mid-'70s, one way or another. Basically got started with microware, working with microware in 77, 78 time frame, pre-OS-9 with RT68 and A-Basic, which is 6800 base code.
Wow.
Worked on when they came out with OS-9, worked on 6809 on various platforms, Smoke Signal, Southwest Technical Products, about half a dozen different SS50, S100 type platforms.
You programmed?
I've programmed a little bit of everything over time. Was a Motorola consultant for a while, did a Motorola engineering consulting for had my own company, but was a licensed Motorola consultant, worked with them and their customers to help get products up and running using Motorola products. And been working with OS-9 in various flavors and forms since 78, 79 time frame. I now own OS-9, or one of the part owners. It's a partnership that owns OS-9 now. There's three of us. And so, short history, I've been working with OS-9 ever since it was written. Still working with OS-9 today, primarily on ARM, x86, PowerPC, 68K platforms. We're still putting it out there. We just recently introduced, I think if you look on the Microware Facebook page, probably less than a month ago, what we're now calling a Community Edition OS-9. So there's a version you can run under VBox under Windows or VBox under Linux. That's, it's a full OS-9. Has a compiler on it, so you can sit there and play around with the current OS-9 as we have it. It's not real time, of course, since it's running under a virtual machine, but we're also going to be introducing the same thing running on these little ARM boards, these little $25, $35 ARM boards like the Raspberry Pi, Banana Pi, Orange Pi, BeagleBone Black. I got a whole box of them down here that we've got OS-9 running on now.
Wow.
So OS-9 is still alive and well. We're still doing product development on it. Now, this is OS-9, not on the 6809. Been around the track a couple times.
And tell us how you were kind of instrumental with the CoCo.
Well, I didn't know it as the CoCo back then. It was a unnamed project back when I was working. I think we were called Microcom Engineering. Was our myself and another guy back then, and Motorola had started up this program where we were Motorola licensed consultants, where we were given all sorts of internal access to Motorola technology, Motorola engineering. And our job was to get in more detail than what a field engineer would, a Motorola field engineer or Motorola sales guy would. In other words, we would work with the customer to actually bring up their hardware. And I got a call from the local Motorola office. I'm here in Dallas, in Plano right now. At the time we were down in Dallas. And wanted to know if I could help a customer. And I said, well, what's their problem? He said, can't tell you. I said, well, what do they need? He said, can't tell you that. And it's like, well, I don't know how I'm going to help them if I don't know what's going on. And he said, I need to get someone to call you from Motorola corporate first. He says, because we need to have you sign a non-disclosure. I said, well, we already have non-disclosures in place. He says, well, this takes a different one. And a little bit later, I got called by, I don't know, there's a product manager or general manager, but anyway, one of the high muckety mucks of Motorola. And they faxed me down a non-disclosure and then told me the customer was Tandy Corp. And they needed me to take my equipment over to Tandy, figure out what was wrong with their equipment, help them get their equipment working, configured, and set up to help them get this 6809-based product working. And if I needed parts to sacrifice my system, call them up, let them know what I needed, and they would get me replacements by morning. And I said, well, that'll be a neat trick considering it's 12-week lead time on most of these parts. But he said, don't worry about it. Just get the job done and we'll get you parts. And I ended up sacrificing most of my exerciser system to get their, 2 or 3 systems up and running because each one had something wrong with it. But
what do you mean by exerciser system?
An exerciser is the old Motorola development system that ran on what they call the Exerbus. It was an old board, what was it? Gold-plated fingers. I think it was 100 pins. Pretty good sized system at the time. But the exerciser system, I imagine if you look on eBay or something, you'll find some of them hanging out there. But it was a development system. It, you could compile software on it and stuff like that, but it also had the board in it where you could plug it in between the chip and the socket and be able to debug the target board. And, it's sort of like a primitive version of JTAG, where you could actually take over the CPU and take over control of the socket and go out there and manipulate the thing and see what was going on the board.
Like a breakout board or something?
Sort of like a breakout board, but allowed you to debug your software and figure out what was going on in the target system so you could get it up and running enough to do things like get a debugger running. Or get a monitor running of some type. And that was always a challenge back then because, most of the chips, on reset, they go to a fixed address and start executing. Well, if your address bus isn't working or your data bus isn't working, basically you don't start. Unlike a lot of the chips nowadays, and especially these ARM chips, heck, the bootloader is built into the chip. So it basically, took over the bus, let you see what was going on. And, they had some pretty nice tools for as primitive as it was compared to stuff nowadays. I mean, this is pre-BDM, pre-JTAG, the tools we use nowadays.
Was the exerciser manufactured by Motorola themselves then? Or?
Yep. It was a custom system manufactured by Motorola. In fact, I think it came out of their Phoenix office, their Motorola Systems division, which was located in Phoenix. And, at the time, there's a horrendous lead time for them to get a system.
So this was specifically a 6809?
68, well, I had one that would do 6800, 6809, and 68,000. In fact, it was funny there for probably 6 months or better. Anytime the local sales office wanted to do a 68,000 demo, we were the ones giving the demo. They actually came to our office with their customers to do the demos because they didn't have the equipment in their office. Their exerciser wouldn't do 68K.
So the 6809 and the 68,000 chip came out about the same time, right?
6800 came out first. It was a couple of years later, the there's 6800, then the 6802, then the 6809, then the 6809E, and then the 68,000 came out in 79.
Wow.
I want to say. The original, we called it the aircraft carrier. Big, huge monster, 68-pin chips, about 3 inches long and about 1.5 inches wide. I think that came out in like 69. And then they were producing 68K processors up until about 95? So 95, 97 time frame when Motorola announced they were discontinuing the 68,000 family. And currently, as far as I know, the only ones still produced are the 68349 and 68360.
So let me ask you, when you were involved in this, did they always have a 6809 as the target for this machine, or did they? Okay, so it wasn't like they were searching for something. They already picked the 6809 and went from there.
Yeah, they had the 6809. The big question was, could they make it? This was when I worked on it. The project didn't have a name. It was a proof of concept to see if they could develop a small personal computer and be able to manufacture it inexpensive enough that it would be something they could sell in their stores.
Was this because of what Apple was doing, or it had nothing to do with Apple, right? I mean,
I don't think it had anything to do with Apple. It's just Tandy was looking for something to put the Tandy name on, or the Radio Shack name on.
Now, wasn't what Tandy basically was working with is a more or less from the reference design from Motorola? Right.
Yep. They basically took the reference design and then moved it around a bit, added some features to it, and changed things up a bit.
So
that's how a lot of things got started with the early 6809 stuff. The early 68,000 stuff was they're basically copies or similar to the Motorola reference designs.
So the VDG chips and the SAMs and all that were present and there to be made working. Is that what your job was, to get it all to work together? Or?
Get it all to work together and get it so they could get their board up and running, and then show them how to use the equipment to actually get their board running. The board was almost running. Once I got their systems up and running, I then showed them how to use the systems to get their board running. Their board was close to running, but not quite. They had to do some cutting wires, green wire as it was back then, to fix a few things. But then once I got that up, then we actually got wasn't called MBug back then. What was it called? Forget what their debugger was, but basically it was the original Motorola debugger. It's called MBug nowadays, or last time I used it was called MBug, but I forget what it was called back then. But we got a prompt up on the machine, and so they were happy at that point.
So at that point in time, and later you went and did something else. Were you happy to see it was named and became something?
Oh
because
yeah,
of your work?
I was thrilled to see the color computer come out. Once it finally came out, I think it was over a year later when it finally came out. I forget what year. Yeah, forget what year color computer was introduced by Radio Shack. One of you guys probably know better than I do.
1980. I think it was July.
Yeah.
July of 80.
So this was like either late 78 or early 79 when I was working with them. And like I said, at that time, it did not have a product name. In fact, the project didn't even have a name.
Right. Well, the history that we learned of the color computers before they made it the home computer, the first version was the Project Green Thumb, which was used for the agricultural industry, where it was basically just a real simple terminal where they could look up, supply chain and weather and things like that. And so that was kind of an industrial application. And then the next product was the video text, which was basically kind of a dumb terminal. It didn't have an operating system. It just ran as a terminal. But that was really the first commercial product, was the video text. And then took that same case and that same design and then made it the color computer. So I'm wondering if you were working on the Green Thumb project or the video text, or if because even to get the Green Thumb off the ground, they would have had to debug the hardware and everything else to get it going, right?
Like I said, this was their first 6809 based board. So.
Yeah, so you might have actually you might have helped kickstart Project Green Thumb, which is the kind of the grandfather of the CoCo.
Yeah, because this was, like I said, this was their first attempt to build a computer system.
Yeah,
that was theirs.
So were you involved with any of the ROM development with Microsoft and stuff too then, or were you just getting the hardware up and running at that point?
At that point, I was just getting hardware up and running.
Now, were you doing that as a representative of Microware, or is this a different role you were playing when you were...
At that time, I was a Microware distributor, a Motorola consultant, but I was self-employed.
Okay.
I had my own company.
Okay.
Sent Motorola a nice large bill for spending time over at Tandy.
Neat.
And giving away your reference stuff.
Yeah.
To make it work.
The biggest project I think I worked on at the time was back then I did an oil field system using a 6809 and RT68, because OS-9 didn't exist yet. And this was to monitor oil well drilling and oil well drilling, all the various aspects of that. And you'd be surprised how complicated drilling an oil well is, how much stuff you have to monitor. But we built a system and deployed it and got to watch it work for a couple of days and got to watch it get destroyed when the oil well blew up.
Oh my God.
Not because of the machine, is it?
No, actually they were frustrated with us because we were setting off alarms all over the place, but their other equipment wasn't. And we were setting off alarms because we were saying, hey, you've got too much mud. When you drill, they pump this, what they call mud down there to flush out all the debris. And that mud has to weigh a certain amount in order to hold down gas and oil, when they hit the pocket. And you keep track of how much mud is in the tanks, how much is in the line, how deep you are. And so you're constantly calculating a total mud volume in a system. And what you look for is what they call a mud bump. At least back then they called it a mud bump, where your total volume jumps. You're not pumping mud. No one's adding mud to the system, but suddenly your calculation says, hey, we just gained 10 barrels of mud. Well, the way you gain 10 barrels of mud is because something's displacing it somewhere. And we were sounding off an alarm saying, hey, you've got a 2-barrel mud bump or a 5-barrel mud bump or something. And their equipment wasn't signaling anything. And we're going, hey, something's wrong somewhere. Either a sensor's wrong or you've got a gas bubble coming up or something. And they kept turning off our alarms and saying, well, our equipment says there's no problem. And I think it was about an hour or so later, the well blew because of a gas bubble.
Wow.
Oh,
wow. We detected the mud displacement I think we detected like a 1 or 2 barrel mud displacement, and their system wouldn't detect anything less than about 10.
Cool.
So, but a barrel of mud, several thousand feet down, that takes a lot of pressure to
And now-
displace that much mud.
We've always heard in some ways that 6809 was used at NASA. Were you involved in anything like that with NASA?
I did a lot of things at NASA. I don't remember the 6809 being down there. I know they had some ModComp computers and some other computer systems down there. The ones I worked on were ModComp 2s and 4s. And you want to talk about primitive, a ModComp 2 does not have condition codes. The only condition you have on a ModComp 2 is equal to 0.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when I was at GPL, there is no Motorola products that was going for the stuff that's going to go up in space.
Yeah,
But was OS-9 used in any NASA projects like the space shuttle or anything like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Why do you say yes like that?
OS-9 is used in a number of government projects, NASA,
Okay.
military and stuff, but I'm not allowed to discuss it.
Right.
Oh.
Fair enough. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And
Yeah, NASA has released some public documents saying that OS-9 was used in some testing equipment and stuff. So, I mean, that's public knowledge. But
Yeah, their test lab down there, most of the stuff in their test lab ran on OS-9.
Wow. Good enough for NASA. Got to be good enough for Nick Marentes too. So,
Well, it's just anything that you're saying in space, you got to make sure that the products are not going to get affected by cosmic rays and other issues, wide temperature ranges, and not all of Motorola was getting authorized for that. There is a couple of companies that were making chips that, let's just say, knew some people back in the Congress and Senate, and they were able to get their products in.
Now, a lot of the early RCA processors were the favorite processors for going up in space. Mm-hmm. They were, in theory, rad hardened.
Yep.
And could handle the space. But yeah, getting space qualified is a real trip.
Well, the first computers for the shuttle, and correct me if I'm wrong, they were core memory.
Yep. Core memory, and a lot of it was RTL logic, not even TTL.
Mm-hmm.
It was older RTL logic.
that's cool.
Yeah, there's you'd be surprised at some of the really old technology out there running stuff.
So OS-9 was used in a lot of controllers in industry then, basically.
Oh, it's used in a lot of stuff. I mean, I know I was an expert witness, although I never got called. But some of you, especially here in the U.S., probably remember this little oil well blow up down in the Gulf a few years ago.
Heard about it. Yep.
Called the Deepwater.
Yeah. That was BP. That one took forever to clean up. Yep.
Yeah. Well, OS-9 was running a lot of the oil well equipment on there.
Wow.
OS-9 is used a lot in industrial situations. It's, y'all cuss OS-9 every day, even now. I'm sure you've pulled up to a stoplight and got mad at it because it changed on you or something like that. That stoplight's been installed since 1995. Well, 97 for sure. It's running on an ATC 2070. It's running OS-9. And the ATC 2070 is the only authorized controller that ITE and other will fund.
Well, that's cool to know.
So if there's ever going to be like what they predicted in that movie Terminator, where the computers become self-aware and there's Judgment Day, OS-9 may become Skynet.
I'm surprised. I mean,
it seems like it's controlling everything.
it's used in a lot of places. The biggest problem we're having with right now is just figuring out how to market OS-9 in today's environment. That's part of the reason for coming out with the community edition of OS-9. Microware did really good back when they sold personal OS-9 and things like that, because people would play with it at home and then eventually it would end up in their jobs. And so then Microware would end up selling it commercially. But,
QNX opened like a community version about a decade ago for
right.
stuff. So hey,
That's
try
still
it
one
out.
of your major competitors, I presume, is QNX.
Probably one of the, well, QNX or Linux, what they quote real-time Linux. Although most of the people that have tried real-time Linux that are trying to do real-time will tell you that real-time Linux is a cuss word.
Okay.
It's Linux. There you go.
Yeah, I know a couple of traffic controller manufacturers that were told that, hey, we need something better than the 68360. We're going to go to a PowerPC chip. And by the way, we're not going to pay royalties for OS-9 anymore. We're going to use an embedded real-time Linux. And so they went out and spent, let's just say, in excess of 7 figures trying to develop a Linux-based traffic controller. And let's just say I know several traffic controller manufacturers who you do not want to use the word Linux anywhere within arm's reach.
Talking about rage quitting.
You said the L word.
Well, Linux was not designed as a real-time operating system.
Yep.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, the VP of Econolite in California, VP of Engineering, he said, they told us it was free, that, we could get it for free and that support was free and all this stuff was free, no more royalties and all. And he says, what they didn't tell us was we were going to have to hire 1 or 2 specialists to configure Linux to work on our hardware platform, configure the tools to work with our hardware platform, and then keep those people on full time to support our hardware platform.
But it's free.
Yeah. He said those 2 employees cost more than we ever paid in support and royalties for OS-9.
Wow. Now you can charge more.
Well, I've been self-employed for close to 3 decades now. And a lot of people don't take into account, they say, well, software engineers only $75,000. Nah. When you work out the math for what it takes to hire a software engineer, a $75,000 software engineer costs you closer to $200,000 a year. By the time you figure in taxes, benefits, office space, equipment, everything else, it's easily 3x their salary. It's hard to get below 3x salary for a software person.
I have a question for you. How did it come about that you and the 2 partners that you mentioned earlier came to get the rights to OS-9? Because it was originally Microware, then went to Radisys, and it kind of bounced around.
Right.
So how did that all come about?
Back in 2000, Radisys had a big project with Nokia, and Microware had some technology to where they could run ATM at wire speed. And so Radisys was looking at licensing OS-9 and that technology from Microware. And some bean counter figured out that over the term of the contract, they would end up paying Microware more in royalty and engineering fees than Microware's market value, because Microware was publicly traded at the time, more than Microware's market value on the stock market was at the time. So Radisys bought Microware. Specifically for a Nokia contract. And then Radisys basically got rid of all the engineering, all the management. When we bought, Microware, it was down to 2 part-time employees. Radisys basically took the attitude of, hey, it's printing money. I mean, literally, their CFO in a meeting I had at Radisys probably a decade ago, it's like, well, why does Radisys do anything with OS-9? The CFO said, because it's printing money. He says, 80 cents of the dollar of OS-9 sales goes straight to their bottom line. Because they're only supporting it for what people would pay to have done to it. So it's 2 part-time engineers was all they had going for it. So they basically took Microware from, I think they were going about 16 million in sales a year down to 2.5 million in sales a year. And at that point, Radisys was 350, 400 million a year company. And they got a new CEO, new CFO, new senior management, because the board didn't like the way the company was going. And the board basically gave the direction of, if it's not core business, dispose of it. And Radisys actually, at that point, this was August or September of 2012, actually had a memo. I mean, I actually have a copy of the memo somewhere that stated that OS-9 was not an ongoing business. It was to be shut down. All customers were to be given a end of lifetime buy. And that was going to be the end of life of OS-9. No future work, no future sales. They weren't even going to bother selling the assets. They were just going to chuck it in the trash.
Wow.
And at that time, there were 3 of us distributors, myself, Microsys in Germany, and, well, it's called Forks in Japan, but Forks created a company called FreeStation. And basically, the 3 of us, all independently initially, started to talking to Radisys about what could we do to keep this going, because we had, major industrial customers. I mean, Matsushita, Siemens, Eagle Signal, Econolite, Halliburton, major customers using, buying tens of thousands of licenses every year. And it's like, what can we do? And, to keep OS-9 going. And of course, Radisys is like, we're wiping our hands of it. Don't want anything more to do with it. It's not worth the effort. And originally they approached us of, well, we'll just issue you a license to go do what you want with OS-9. We'll still own it, but we'll give you a license to do whatever you want with it. And of course, as soon as I took that, my attorney, he said that license isn't worth the paper it's written on. He says, if something happens to Radisys, you have no rights. He says, you have a license, but the license isn't worth anything if the company that owns it goes under or gets bought, which I don't know if you all know it or not, but Radisys no longer exists. Radisys disappeared early this year. They got bought out. So Radisys no longer even exists. But so what my attorney here in the U.S. suggested was the 3 of us go together, form a limited partnership, and negotiate as a limited partnership to buy the total intellectual property rights to OS-9. And it took Radisys a little bit to come around to the concept, because they didn't want to mess with it. But we basically
they'll take the money though, right?
Yeah. But basically we worked out an agreement with them where we came to a mutually agreeable amount. And Microware LP is the partnership of RTSI LLC, Microsys GmbH, and FreeStation Inc. Microware LP purchased all the intellectual property rights, trademarks, patents, copyrights, everything there was to do with OS-9. And that was done, I think the legal date is February 23rd of 2013. There's a letter. If you go to microware.com, you'll actually see the letter up there. And I think the effective date was made March 1st. But we basically purchased OS-9. Took us a couple of months to get everything copied out of Des Moines. I literally flew up to Des Moines, Iowa. I built a system here that exactly duplicated their server in Des Moines that had all the sources to OS-9 on it. Same version of Linux, same version of ClearCase source code control, and sat down with John, their software guy, their systems guy, and we literally migrated all the sources to OS-9 over to my hardware. So I've got a system sitting back here in storage right now that has the history of OS-9 as far back as Microware had it on their systems up there, under clear case. And I literally went up there, made sure we could build everything, build OS-9 off that system, that everything, we could literally rebuild the world. And then I packed up Des Moines, Iowa. I packed up all their offices. I basically left Rick Yates and Steve McClellan up there with a desk and a PC in their office. And in theory, they were to have new jobs come Monday. I left on Friday, and on Monday they were terminated from Radisys. But I literally packed up everything in a big U-Haul truck and drove it from Des Moines, Iowa to Plano, Texas, and reestablished Microware from here. Let's see. Yeah, you can't quite see it, but if you could, that black box right there is the home of OS-9. That's where all the sources to everything to OS-9 reside.
Is that backed up too?
Oh yeah, it's backed up to the cloud. It's backed up to a server in Germany. It's backed up to a server in Japan. Yeah, it's backed up to a RAID box here locally.
Now, you'd mentioned that Radisys at the end there only had 2 part-time engineers. Like, I assume you've expanded engineering staff, and is it shared between Japan, Germany, and you, or is it?
Yeah. There's currently 4 of us working full time, or mostly full time on OS-9 now. Kai Thompson in Germany, and Peter Schuler. Peter is primarily marketing and sales. Kai Thompson from an engineering point of view. Myself here in the U.S., and then we have Taki-san and Yoshi Tarasma in Japan, are the 4 software engineers. And we all work probably 90+% of our time doing software development on OS-9. Here in the US, I do not just the OS-9 software, I do sales, support, I wear all the hats. So, but yeah, there's 4 of us constantly doing development work on OS-9 now. When we first purchased it, one of the first efforts it was undertaken was to look at what we had and where we wanted to go with it. We've got pictures of whiteboards where we've listed all the issues we saw with OS-9, software that need to be updated. We need to run on newer hardware, because I think the last board support package for OS-9 that had been developed for ARM was like an ARM, I think it was an ARM 5 or an ARM 4 chip that was already close to a decade old. I think it was the Intel Strong Arm chip was the last chip that was done ARM-wise. PowerPC, I think PowerPC that was done 5 years ago was an 8200 series. And so, I mean, basically very little have been done with OS-9 for over a decade, other than what customers were willing to pay for. So first project I undertook was to port OS-9 to an ARM 7, which, you would think, well, ARM 5, ARM 7, not a big deal. Well, if you go look at the ARM history, going from ARM 5 to ARM 7 is a major change in technology. There's over 100 and something new instructions, new MMU, new caches. I mean, it's almost a totally different chip going to an ARM 7 from the previous series of ARMs. And so it took me about 15 months, because you have to port the assembler, port the linker, port the compiler. And then once you've got those ported to generate the code, then you have to generate, the bootstrap and figure out how to get the bootstrap to come up on a board, which is, lots of time with JTAG. Lots and lots of time learning JTAG and learning how ARM works. The thing that helped a bit that Rick Yates helped us with is they had a ARM simulator. So we were able to software simulate the bootstrap of OS-9 and in the initial kernel cold boot with the simulator, such that once we went to hardware, it made getting the hardware, we knew the hardware was good because Linux ran on it. So getting OS-9 running on the hardware was a lot simpler with JTAG because we knew it would basically run in the simulator. But still, it took the better part of 15 months by the time we ported over the compiler and compiler tools, then got the basic bootstrap running, then got the basic kernel running, and then we had to go through and get all the tools, the various file managers, all the command line stuff, all recompiled for ARM7. And since then, we've been busy little beavers working on ARM7. We have it, in fact, we even have it working on ARM8 in 32-bit mode now.
Okay, I got a question now. All of this work you're doing is command line type thing. There's no GUI or anything, right?
Nope. We're working with a company in Germany called Zybase, and we have Zybase 9, which is a GUI for OS-9. And we have that working on the ARM chips now, ARM and PowerPC and x86. So we actually have if you go to the Facebook, Microware LP Facebook page, you'll see some screenshots of the desktop of Zybase 9. Zybase 9 is quite similar in capabilities to the old G Windows. It's quite easy to write applications for it where you hook it up to sensors in OS-9 and convert a sensor value to a needle movement on the screen. They have various kinds of instruments you can display and ways to hook those up to real A to D or D to A type inputs, so you can display instruments on the screen. So
that was one of my favorite parts. I did a little bit of work with G Windows in OS 9000, and we actually had it hooked up to presses and stuff like that. And it would actually, you wouldn't have to write the code to do it. It would just send the value, and your graphic of a needle or a slider bar, whatever, just automatically update. You wouldn't have to write the code to actually interpret it.
Right, and that's Zybase 9 does that. It has the hooks in it where you can create a needle and pump it a value, and it'll display properly on the screen.
So you have your version of ease of use.
Yes. It's basically similar to Windows XP or a Windows 98 type desktop. If you go look at it and play with it.
With the bar across the bottom.
With the bar across the bottom and things like that. It's there's still a lot of work to do with it. It's strictly frame buffer based at the moment. The hooks are in the driver to be able to hook into the intelligent GPU chips, but the hook is not in the code yet to do it. Right now, like if you grab a screen and scoot it, all that is done in Zybase 9. There's a hook in the driver to move block, but currently Zybase 9 doesn't call that hook to actually have the GPU do the move. So we're still working with Klaus over in Germany to come up with these updates to Zybase to be able to use some of these features. Of course, the biggest problem is with any graphics chip, every graphics chip is different. So you create a move routine for one chip, and fine, it works for that chip, but it doesn't work for any others. You have to, the next ARM CPU that comes out uses a different GPU. You get to write everything all over again from scratch. Well, not so much from scratch, but close to it.
That's why you have libraries.
Yes, but our biggest problem is what libraries we use. One of the things we're very, very careful about with OS-9 is if we go out and look at a library to use because we want to pick up somebody's stack, like a USB stack, or like what I'm working on right now, OpenSSL, OpenSSH, is it cannot be a GNU license. We have a number of our customers like Siemens and Halliburton and such. If there's a GNU license, it basically puts a big red X on our software and says cannot use in-house. You know, if there's a GNU license attached to it, it cannot be used. BSD licenses are approved. Some of the Amazon licenses are approved. So we have to be very careful about what software we look at for libraries. You know, it's like I'm updating. We have OpenSSL and OpenSSH ported to OS-9 on 68K and x86 and ARM and PowerPC. And I'm currently in the process of updating those because the version we have ported, there was a CVS security warning came out 2 months ago. I guess it was that there's a timing issue that can cause the OpenSSL to send everything clear text instead of encrypting it. So we're having to update to the current version of OpenSSL to fix that problem. And along with that, we found out that OpenSSL, the version we're using, they're going to discontinue the 1.02 support at the end of 2019. So we've got to, you know, make the step up to 1.1, which is not API compatible. So all sorts of fun stuff trying to keep up with the industry out there and keep our technology current. But
how do you keep your brain from exploding?
Carefully. Needless to say, we have weekly almost weekly conference calls between Germany, the U.S., and Japan. We talk at, let's see, it's 6:30 in the morning Dallas time right now, which is 1:30 in the afternoon in Germany and 9:30 at night in Japan, in Tokyo. But it's the closest time we can find where everybody is more or less awake and can talk. You know, Germany's getting ready to wrap up their day over there. I don't think those guys over there work past 4:30 in the afternoon. And you know, in Japan, they're all calling in from home because it's 9:30 at night. But we conference, you know, weekly on, you know, the direction we're going. It's like, you know, Ultra C, the C compiler we've got now. That Microware came up with that in the late 90s.
You're talking about Ultra C?
Yep, Ultra C. Came up with that in the late 90s. It uses a licensed product from EDG and AT&T. And that license was allowed to expire. And, you know, Radisys didn't maintain Ultra C to standards. So, you know, it's mostly C99 compatible, but most people nowadays want C11, if not C14 compatibility. And so we looked at licensing the current EDG and primarily EDG products. It was an Edison Design Group products to update our software, and found out basically it would take a brand new license that would cost us almost 7 figures for the license, and which is hard for us to justify.
Hard to recoup that.
We have just finished porting CLang LLVM to OS-9. Well, not to OS-9. CLang LLVM will now generate an OS-9 module. So we can sit there on a PC, either under Windows or under Linux, and compile with the target being OS-9. And so we now have a current technology compiler, cross compiler for OS-9. At this moment, we're still working on the debugger. We've got the debugger basically working. The biggest problem at the moment is we're trying to integrate everything with the Eclipse IDE, and Eclipse and CLang aren't very well integrated yet at this point, we're finding out. So, there's a lot of focus being done on, updating our compiler technology. At the same time, updating, what CPUs we run on. We now run on all the current PowerPC, x86, ARM processors, as long as we're running in 32-bit mode. We don't support ARM in 64-bit mode yet, and not real sure if there's a lot of demand for it. The other path we're working on, although it's not got a lot of focus yet, basically we have an intern looking at it, is over in Germany, is we're looking at running OS-9 and Linux simultaneously on multi-core CPUs. We do that currently on x86 using a third-party product, but we're looking at being able to do OS-9 and Linux on, you take a quad-core CPU, you could run OS-9 on one core and Linux on the other three. So you could have OS-9 handling your real-time embedded, Ethernet or other embedded processes that are very time critical with their own dedicated CPU, while you have a general purpose OS, Linux or Windows, running on the other ARM cores or other cores of the CPU. Our current focus is on ARM, but the plan is to focus on ARM and PowerPC. The x86 market, unfortunately, there's so many products in the x86 market, would be beating ourselves to death for an extremely small set of market share. But is my mic muted, or is it?
We hear you.
Okay,
We hear you. Yeah.
I saw a comment come up and said, okay. So we're going to be focusing primarily on ARM and PowerPC, running OS-9 multi-core, which will be, you can run OS-9 on a couple cores as independent, two different OS-9 OSs, or you could run OS-9 on a core and Linux on the other cores, or variations thereof. And this will be done in real time. This involves what's called a level 1 hypervisor, which are basically a bare metal hypervisor. The community edition of OS-9 we have out there now under VBox. VBox is what's considered to be a level 2 hypervisor. VBox allows you to run virtual machines, but it's virtual machines running under a general purpose OS. So there's no, even though OS-9 is quote real time, OS-9 is not real time because it's running under a virtual machine. It's running under a general purpose OS.
That's not real time.
It's not talking directly to the hardware. It's kind of abstracted from it.
Right.
Hypervisor level 1, you would be talking to the hardware directly.
Right. Hypervisor level 1 is basically partitioning the hardware, and we would partition out a core and certain pieces that OS-9 would control directly. And then the other pieces of the hardware would be partitioned out to Linux or Windows or whatever other OS you want to run.
It must be cool at your dinner time when you sit and talk to your wife and tell her what you did today.
My wife has no concept about what I do.
No. Okay. My wife is an Alzheimer's researcher too, and she does the same kind of thing when we sit at the table. She starts talking about all these things that she does and stuff, and my eyes kind of gloss over. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, it's basically, I guess what I'm pointing out is OS-9 is, despite what some people like to think, OS-9 is far from dead. We're currently trying to play catch up. Ideally, OS-9 would be running, under a level 1 hypervisor, multi-core with Linux 5 or 10 years ago. Instead of today trying to figure out how to make it do it. In theory, we would have had something like C-Lang LLVM 5 or 10 years ago.
So basically, Radis has put the whole project on pause, is what basically happened. They were basically just doing support of whoever.
Radis has basically milked it for royalties. Their CFO said so. It's just all OS-9 was to Redis was a money press.
Is OS-9 still the real-time multitasking? Is that the strength of it?
Yep.
I mean, that's the
Yeah,
backbone.
I mean, you get on like an ARM CPU, one of these, 800 or 900 megahertz or gigahertz ARM CPU, from interrupt to first instruction of the ISR is teens of nanoseconds. I think it's like 15, 16 nanoseconds on a typical ARM core. And similar on PowerPC, it's in the teens of nanoseconds from hardware interrupt to actual first instruction of the interrupt service routine, of your interrupt service routine, your device interrupt service routine. OS-9 executes a couple dozen instructions from the time the hardware is recognized by the CPU to the time we get to the actual interrupt service routine. I'll bet there's no more than a couple dozen instructions. It's a very, very short trip through the OS. And it's still very much real time. We've added on OS-9 on PowerPC and x86 and ARM is a totally different beast than what you're used to on 6809. We have threads, p-threads. Of course, we have the TCP/IP stack, the USB stack. Support for SATA drives, SD, eMMC type storage.
But they're all like modules, right?
Yep, they're all modular. Still the same modular architecture.
Wow.
Still the same basic OS-9 you know and love from OS-9 or 6809 days. We use a different shell now. I mean, we still have the legacy shell, but we tend to use M shell, which is more like a corn shell.
Why do you think you guys hung on to OS-9 all these years? You know what I mean? Why wasn't it made, OS-24 later on? You just stuck with it because everybody knew it?
I think that was a lot of it.
Legacy.
Brand name recognition is important. I mean,
I'm sorry to interrupt real quick for just a second, but there was a question in the live chat by someone by the name of Dragon Bites, but they're asking, is the file system you're using now the same as what was used back on the 6809 version, or has that file system evolved too?
It's evolved considerably. I mean, the file system on OS-9 68000 was similar, but different. The one on OS 9000 is very much different. I mean, we have, besides user and world, we have user group world permissions. We have things called small files. So instead of taking up a sector of 512 bytes for a descriptor, and then another sector of 512 bytes for a small text that may only be 100 bytes, we set a bit that says, hey, this is a small file, so the file descriptor, the text, everything is all in the same sector. The file system itself supports, I forget what size drives we support now. They're monstrously huge drives. Because I know like the 6809 system and the early 68K system, we couldn't support a disk drive bigger than like 2 gigabytes, I think. I'm not even sure if the 6809 would support 2 gig.
It did if you use multi-sector clusters. You can go up to 4 gig.
Okay.
So it messed up some utilities that were hard-coded to think there's only one sector per cluster.
Right. The 68K would go up to like, I think, a 2 gig or 4 gig drive. And I think we're good up to... Well, I know we're good well above 4 gig now.
So you can have file names more than 8 and 3, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, even 6809 did that.
I think, in fact, we've, Japan, a year ago, what is it, ITF8 is the file coding we're using now. So I think we're good up to like 256 characters in a file name. And it's not multi-code character set. I think it's the ITF8 character set, where you use, the standard ASCII is only 7 bits. This uses all 8 bits for a character. So you can encode a lot of some of the common Japanese characters and things like that. So,
So it's modern.
We've, you can have some of the stuff that you used to not be able to use in file names, we can use now. Some of the
you mean punctuation or what?
Punctuation and stuff. It's legal in file names now. So yeah, the file name is considerably different. Our file naming system is considerably different than what it used to be.
Well, there's a follow-up question from the same person. Is it backwards compatible, or if you brought in an old OS-9 formatted media, would it recognize the legacy file system?
I know it did. I would have to check, see if it still does. I think the code is still in there. It probably would. But I know most of the time when we're transferring stuff to the new file system, we just copy it onto a USB drive and plug it in the new system and copy it off. So
supports FAT32 also.
Oh yeah, we support what is it? FAT12, FAT16, and FAT32. There's lots of FAT file systems out there.
There's also a question on YouTube about the Macintosh OS-9 and all that confusion.
Yeah, that's actually a version of Linux is what it is. It's not OS-9, the RTOS.
OS-10 is, but Mac OS-9 was predecessor.
Okay. Yeah, that's the one that Apple and Microware went to court over, and basically the court said there are 2 different pieces of software running on 2 totally different platforms that'll never meet each other. So there's no problem with the naming, which Microware had a big issue with, but Apple had the bucks. But we're still supporting it, still developing it. One of my focuses, besides trying to keep things like OpenSSL, OpenSSH running, and supporting 68K, I'm the sole support of 68K at the moment. The other people, Kai and Trasma and Taki-san, Kai can't remember the last time he touched a 68K system. And I don't think Taki-san or Trasma even know how to spell 68K.
That was so 30 years ago.
Yeah. And quite frankly, I think I'm the only one that has customers still building and shipping 68K systems.
If it ain't broke,
yeah.
Don't fix it.
So we just recently introduced for OS-9 68K 4.0, which is one of the things we did. We're a little hesitant to do it, but we decided to do it. Whenever we recompile the OS from source totally, such as OS-9 was 5.2, I guess it was, on PowerPC and ARM and x86, and that's what was shipping out of Des Moines. When we bought OS-9 and rebuilt the world, as we call it, from total source, in other words, wiped out all the binaries and rebuilt everything. The first time we did it, we re-editioned OS-9 to 6.0. And I recently did the same thing for 68K, was I rebuilt OS-9 68K from source, which turned out to be a real challenge because Microware for the past 15 years or better had only compiled the bits and pieces of 68K they had to fix the issue they were fixing, and they had never recompiled all the utilities, file managers, everything from scratch. And the first time I did a recompile of OS-9 68K from source to rebuild the universe, it didn't work. It took probably a couple months to get OS-9 68K to rebuild from source. So since we've done that, we now have OS-9 68K 4.0, which is what's being installed in the traffic controllers out there with the OpenSSL, OpenSSH, because they've decided that traffic controller networks are what does DHS call it? DHS has this name for it, but basically it's a network that needs to be secured and protected. So
Against
no more
unauthorized intrusion. Against unauthorized intrusion.
Right. Well, and the thing is, traffic controllers use their own crazy. I mean, every manufacturer has their own protocol. I mean, up until late 90s, you could not mix, say, an Econolite controller with an Eagle controller, with a Nastec controller, or a McCain controller. They all talked different protocols to do the same thing.
So for a network, you had to have all the same manufacturer in order to.
Right. In order to talk to them, you had to have everybody in your city had to be the same manufacturer. In the 90s, was it ITE or Nashua, one of them, the National Highway Association, came up and said, hey, this is ridiculous. We now have a controller where we can run the same software on various controllers. In other words, you could take Eagle's CPAC and run it on an Econolite controller, or Econolite software and run it on an Eagle controller, because they were all running OS-9 and we had standardized an API such that, software written on one controller would run on any controller. And in fact, they went so far as to establish testing labs. So in order for a controller to be sold, you had to get put on what was called a QPL, qualified purchasing list, which meant you had passed all of the compatibility testing. I mean, Caltrans actually set up a lab. California Department of Transportation actually set up a lab, wrote a ton of software, which had to be rewritten. But basically, if you could get through the Caltrans test, then you could get put on QPL. Once you're on QPL, then government grants would fund, cities purchasing that controller. And so they got to the point they could put different vendors' software on different vendors' hardware, but you still had to have that vendor's central office software in order to be able to change timings or calendars or things like that. So then they developed NTCIP, National Traffic Internet Connect Protocol. I think that's right. NTCIP, which was basically SNMP based, but it's like setting a calendar. There's an NTCIP MIB that's set calendar. And if you were compatible, then it worked on anybody's controller and anybody's software. So you could use Econolite software on an Eagle controller and talk NTCIP to it and use anybody's central office software. And so that's the direction the traffic control industry has moved over the last couple of decades. The problem was they used NTCIP v1, which is not encrypted. It's just basically, here's a UDP packet in a clear that's a SNMP MIB for calendar, and of course the spec is published. You can go up there on the internet and download the NTCIP specs. So you look at the traffic control network, if you got access to a traffic control network and you have the NTCIP specs in front of you, everything's open source. You can tell exactly what's going on.
Awesome.
And you can hack it. Great.
Well, in theory, traffic control networks are on a standalone network.
Right.
And I can tell you exactly what happens when they're not. Because I had to help Tampa Bay figure out why all their traffic lights went blinking red at 4:45 in the afternoon.
Great.
That's when the policemen come out with their flashlights and their colored hands.
Well, with the traffic controller, when the MMU, the multiple malfunction unit, takes over, it requires physical intervention to reset the traffic controller.
Oh, great.
Gee.
So someone physically has to go out to the traffic controller and reset it.
They call it a truck roll.
Yes.
Everyone.
And in Tampa, a certain traffic control engineer who shall remain nameless, in fact, I'm not sure if I know his name or not, decided he was going to be smart. He took his PC in his office. They had an Ethernet card that connected up to the Tampa traffic network, and he added a second Ethernet card that he hooked up to the local network for doing email and browsing and stuff like that.
He made a bridge.
And unbeknownst to him, Windows will automatically bridge those two networks together. So suddenly we had all this email, Windows email and Windows multicast showing up on the traffic network. And a 68360, if you're not familiar with it, only supports 10 megabit Ethernet.
So it
So
choked
here
up.
you have a couple thousand traffic controllers in the city being flooded with multicast and email, email broadcast and all of this kind of stuff. And the 68360 in its infinite wisdom and the OS-9 driver, because I didn't know any better at the time, says, oh, well, I got all these packets coming in. I'm just going to keep processing packets. To heck with the rest of the OS. I'm just going to process packets. And no one really realized it at the time, but the Ethernet controller on a 360 is perfectly capable of sucking 100% CPU time to do that.
Oh, gee.
Because it'll run the Ethernet pretty close to wire speed under OS-9. So needless to say, if you run the traffic controller CPU at 100%, which means you're not running the traffic control software, you're not sending out the watchdog pulses to the MMU. And after 1.2 seconds, the MMU says, hey, you went away, I'm taking over. And when it takes over, the intersection goes to all red flash. And so anyway, we had to go into the Ethernet driver and say, hey, if you see multicast, ignore them. If you see packets coming in too fast, turn off the Ethernet controller, throttle it down. Don't chew up 100% of the CPU. And to put some code in the Ethernet driver, literally at interrupt level, to throttle the Ethernet controller so it wouldn't, shut down traffic controllers. And I'm not real sure what happened to that traffic engineer, but
Do you have other people that you keep an eye on that in a retro setting? Apple Power PC group or something, or is it?
Yes and no. I've got a couple groups that are using the RTSI server. I don't know if many of you remember Uniflex, but there's a Uniflex users group out there yet. But I haven't seen anything on them in ages. CoCo OS-9 is about the only thing I've seen anything really still active out there in the world on legacy hardware.
Oh.
There's some older 6809 stuff up on the server, but I don't know that anyone's done much of anything with it in ages.
I grabbed some of it because I was trying to rebuild some of my lost library from my hard drive crash. So thank you for that. Including some of my own source code.
On our CoCo group, we have 2,500 members, which is pretty good.
Quite a user base.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the Facebook page.
Yeah. Which.
It's a good.
Yeah. I don't know how many of those CoCo systems are still out there. I guess there's still quite a few of them out there from the sounds of it.
Yeah, I don't think any of us have ever found out how many were produced in total. Have they?
From you from Tandy? No.
Yeah.
And I don't know where you'd even find that information, because all the people would know are long gone.
Yeah, that information died with Tandy.
But I know there's still a lot of people out there. I got a email from someone here a while back. He said, now that OS-9's dead, is it possible to get the source to OS-9? And it's like, I hate to inform you of this, but OS-9's not dead. It's still supported, even 68K. And I'm not sure exactly where he got the word that OS-9 was dead, but that is something we have to fight a little bit of, because I go talk to people and it's like, we have OS-9 for this and that. And it's like, oh, I remember OS-9 from, 68K days 20 years ago. It's still around. It's like, yep, still around, still alive, still kicking. And
Is there anything like it, like in Russia or some other, like China? Is China try to do an, real-time operating system, or do you have any,
I know OS-9 is used in Russia and China, and I know they've tried ripping it off quite a bit. China especially. Russia is actually reasonably decent about actually buying real licenses, at least the companies we work with.
You probably want real support.
Yeah. China, on the other hand, I know there was a lot of traffic controllers sold to China for the Olympics to upgrade their traffic control network. And I was recently routed an email from someone was in India or Hong Kong, was trying to get some information on OS-9 that ran on a new traffic controller, and sort of figured out that basically what someone had done was they had cloned an ATC 2070 and were trying to make a new one using, by copying someone else's software. And I informed them that they were in, whatever they were doing was in violation of the license, and that OS-9, is, trademark, copyrighted, protected 100 different ways, even in Asia. And that I would appreciate the name of the people trying to do this effort. And at that point, they promptly went silent. So,
how do you view NitrOS-9 yourself? I mean, you find it's interesting what we're trying to do with it, or?
I find it's interesting that that someone's actually doing a lot of work to maintain something on legacy hardware like that. As far as the OS-9, I mean, we don't have the sources to it. I talked to Mark Hawkins a couple of years ago, and he said he used to have a system in his office that actually had the sources up until the point in time where that system disappeared out of his office, and he wasn't really quite sure what happened to it. He had some suspicions about what happened to it, but when that system disappeared, all the sources to OS-9 6809 disappeared with it. And that was before they had implemented the ClearCase software control, source code control system. So it never got captured under ClearCase. And being such an old system, I don't think it ever got captured on any of their source code control systems. So, from our point of view of OS or NitrOS-9, it's OS-9. The trademark OS-9 is, it's a registered trademark. I guarantee you, I spent thousands of dollars getting that paperwork updated. It took us 4 years to get all that paperwork updated because, again, when Radis has bought Microware, they didn't do all the paperwork. They filed a general purpose piece of paper that said anything we haven't changed the registration on, we still own, and it belongs to us, but they didn't go in and actually change the registrations. And so when we did the IP purchase, our trademark and copyrights and patents attorneys went in and said, we don't know who did this, but this is not the way you do this. And Radis has actually had to go back and re-engage their attorneys to properly re-register the trademarks and copyrights and patents in Radis's name, so they can then properly transfer them to us, so we could then get them transferred properly into our name.
Now, did you have to reimburse them for all that work, or is that
Nope, because that was covered under our purchase agreement. They had to confer on us clear title to all of this intellectual property. Because they hadn't gone in and done it right the first time, that was their fault. So they had to go in and we didn't have to reimburse them for that. That was, they had to make it right per the purchase agreement to buy the intellectual property rights. They had to transfer a clear title. So they had to go in and clean up the paperwork first, so then we could re-register it in our name.
Sounds like you hired the right attorneys.
Let's tell you this way, $450 an hour.
Yeah.
The attorney bill is significant for getting all that taken care of. And it took, once we got the clear title, it still took over a year to get the paperwork back from the USPTO confirming the new registrations.
Now I got a question about what I did on the NitrOS-9 OS-9 site. I put TM on there, and you're happy with that. Someone spoke up and said something about having an R instead. Does it matter, or what's the difference?
It doesn't really matter. Basically, TM, you can put TM on any kind of mark and use it as, quote, a trademark. But there's no protection to it as a, quote, trademark unless you go in and actually register it with the USPTO. Now, once you register with the USPTO, you can continue using TM, or you can now use the R, which indicates it's a registered trademark and under the full protection of the USPTO. So according to my attorney, they're interchangeable. The R gives you, quote, more protection just from the point of view. It says, hey, we've gone through the headache of registering this trademark. TM may or may not be registered. Basically, we were told to use TM back when we first started all this until all the paperwork got squared away. And the paperwork didn't get squared away. We finally got the last of the registrations back from the USPTO early this year.
So all that paperwork also covers back to the very beginning.
Yep.
OS-9.
It covered. If you go do a trademark search on OS-9, you'll see the original registration from Microware Computer Systems Corporation. You'll see them reapply for it. Then you'll see a transfer to Radisys, and then you'll see the transfer from Radisys to Microware LP. So you'll be able to follow the whole chain of history if you go do a trademark search. So yeah, all the paperwork and legal paperwork, registration paperwork is now correct.
Okay, I've got a question. This is maybe dumb, I don't know, but our ROMs have Microware on the CoCo3 on it. If we were to in the future build a new machine, and where would that stand? Would we have to continue to put that on there? If I don't even know what I'm talking about at this point. Maybe somebody else can jump in, but let's say we build it. Somebody got together, say we got 5,000 people interested in the machine down the road, and we wanted to actually come up with something. There's these ROMs to consider, and you're on there. So what happens?
Well, I know we're not going to pursue doing anything about it, but from a legal point of view, I guess if I talk to my attorney about it, she would probably say if it contains a product of Microware out of Des Moines, it still needs to have the Microware OS-9 label on it. Even though technically we own OS-9 6809 because we own all intellectual property that was formerly Microware Systems out of Des Moines, Iowa. But we don't have sources to it. We don't have hardware to support it. We have no intention of devoting resources to it. But I think from a acknowledgement of what's in it, you probably still should put the label on it. We're not going to charge you for the label. I mean, those original labels, Tandy Radio Shack actually paid a fee for those labels. It's probably only a couple cents a label, but they paid a fee for those labels.
And the development too, the upgrades for the
Right.
extended basic was all Microware
Right.
developed, so there's some sort of engineering costs there.
Yeah, that would be a complicated one, I would imagine, because I mean, Microsoft has explicitly said they don't want anything with their ROMs released. So, and I think they even gave Microware grief. You know, they wouldn't share the ROMs, and that's why Microware had to do these kind of over-the-top patches to get it to work on the CoCo3.
Right. So, I mean, it's one of those things of I'm not going to pursue trying to do anything about it. I mean, I don't have the time or resources for it. But I think just from acknowledging the fact that it's a Microware product, you know, Microware OS-9 product, probably ought to put the label on it just to be safe in case at some point down the line we should ever sell it and somebody decides they're going to go out there and pursue it. I would imagine if y'all are ever going to actually go and quote build a large build of these things and duplicate the ROMs, somebody probably ought to write me a letter so I can write a letter back acknowledging it and giving you permission just to cover the bases.
Yeah.
Kind of like what I did with the
what you did with the logo thing you did, because that's on file. I mean, that's actually on a document on a Dropbox drive, and actually on the file server behind me in a folder. That's now documented, so all the business partners have a copy of that.
That's
they
why
have a
we
copy
had
of
to-
that email chain.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's documented with all the partners that you have permission for that logo you created with the OS-9 TM on it, that you have permission to do that.
Okay.
Well, what I'm hoping is that we can actually kind of do a cross-platform kind of promotion there. Like you guys got the community edition now as well, and I'd like to ask you a bit about that. Like, what exactly does that entail you to? Like, is it a full version with some restrictions, what you can do with it, or if you create
Does it have
software?
a GUI?
It's a full version. It does include Xybase 9, a demo version of Xybase 9, so it says demo down the corner or something like that. And you can go to Xybase to get a license that will take that out of there. They send you a couple different files, so it takes demo off the screen. It's a full OS-9. It's fully, the difference is all you have is the command line tools to OS-9. You don't have any of the cross-development tools, source level debuggers, Hawk, all the tools that run like on a PC or Linux. You don't have any of those tools. It does have a C compiler in it. It does have a ROM debugger in it. We think we may have found the code to the OS-9 command line source debug. But I haven't had a chance to go through and see if I can build it yet or not. But we did take Ultra C and get it to compile so it's self-hosted. So, there is Ultra C running under OS-9 on an ARM, or OS-9 Ultra C running on a PowerPC. So you can sit there like on this Banana Pi I have here behind me.
Yeah.
I can sit there on the screen with the shell and say CC and actually compile a program, compile hello world and run it and print it, and it'll print out hello world on the screen. So you got all the libraries and everything, but you don't have any sources. So there's no driver sources. There's no library sources. You also don't have the tools to be able to move it to a different platform. It's a fixed configuration. So basically the concept is, if you get OS-9 for Raspberry Pi, basically it'll be like for Raspberry Pi 3B. It'll only work on a Raspberry Pi 3B. You can't put it on Raspberry Pi 2 because it won't work. Despite what people tell you, there's a world of difference between those two boards, processor-wise and otherwise.
Are you familiar with our CoCo Pi? We have a Raspberry Pi with Linux on it that runs MAME, which has emulators on it. So if someone got this OS-9 for their Pi, would they be able to develop real world things to attach to it with tools in it.
Yep.
And
It's
not
got-
just.
It's
Or
got
would
all the
they-
standard command line tools with it, so you can write programs that talk out the serial ports or I2C ports and manipulate the GPIO.
So is it possible to have OS-9 on a Raspberry Pi host a emulator?
Well, it's not
Or the
emulator.
CoCo? Well, or what I'm
We're running OS-9 native on the
Native.
ARM.
okay.
Yeah,
So you
we-
could run OS-9 software
Yeah.
directly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, is there any licensing restrictions? Like if you get the community version and you develop some software using the native tools, and then you decide to say distribute those tools, is there any restrictions because you're running the community edition to doing that, or is it you can
The
software?
OS-9 itself has to be licensed if you're going to redistribute it. But if you develop software, we're not restricting your software in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
So if you write a program using UltraC and you want to distribute that program, have at it. I mean, we don't make you buy a specific development license in order to be able to do stuff like that. I mean, like we don't charge our customers licenses for the software they develop to run on their OS-9. You know, our OEM customers buy an OEM version of OS-9 that gives them driver sources, the ability to rebuild an OS-9 for a particular set of hardware and then distribute that. You don't have all those tools on the community edition.
So you can develop user programs, but you can't develop specific hardware platforms or certain hardware add-ons or anything like that.
That'll be difficult to do. Although we are looking at putting up like a sample SCF driver and maybe a couple other sample drivers up there so you can see how to build an OS-9 driver. Because like our Ethernet driver, well, the Ethernet driver for the x86 platform, you know, 90% of that code is Intel's code. Our SPIG, or was it SPIG, the gigabit Ethernet driver? I mean, we have an SPF wrapper around Intel code that actually runs the chip, runs their Ethernet chip. So it's like we're going to put some of those drivers up on Microware LP. I've got a GitHub up there or a Git server up there right now. I'm trying to work out how to do this so people can create logins to the Git to be able to go in and pull stuff down and maybe even put stuff in without having to be users on the system. I haven't had time to spend working out how all that's going to work yet, but the plan is to have basically a source server on Microware LP to where we'll put up things like sample SCF drivers, maybe a sample RBF driver, maybe a sample network driver, probably a sample USB driver, and then also allow people to check in code if they want to, contribute it to the public domain. Where people can put it in and everyone else can see what's up there. But the current stuff that's being put out is, there's no what we call ports directory, which has all the stuff you need to be able to reconfigure it to work on a different version of board. So when you get an image for like a Raspberry Pi 3B, it's only going to work on a Raspberry Pi 3B, and you don't have the parts to be able to reconfigure it for a new board. The parts aren't there for that. It's one of those things we were trying to debate. How do we put something out there that people could play with and be useful, but at the same time not upset our commercial customers who have paid, $10,000 for an OEM license for sources so they can port this stuff onto their commercial hardware and all. So we've had to sort of play this game of what do we give people that's usable versus how much do we hold back so we don't, we protect our income base. And the community edition is, I suspect it's undergoing to go many changes before we settle down on exactly what it is. But we made our first cut with the x86 V-Box version that's up there right now. You could download that off of the Microware site, load up Oracle V-Box under Windows, import the image, and run it. And it's basically the same thing. It shows up on the ARM board, except for that's x86. That's x86 configured for VBox.
Cool. Well, we suggest people should go try, or that are interested in it should go try that out. But I think we need to have a little bit of a break here. It's been a pretty long segment, but thank you so much for giving us some of the background history and all of the information on what you're currently doing and where everything's going. It's been a fascinating talk. So thank you very much.
Not a problem.
Yeah, when we come back from break, I just wanted to, I don't know if you finished the story of how you were helping Tandy, debug the CoCo when they were trying to release it. We did get some feedback from John Linville, who was in the live chat too. He said that the actual Project Green Thumb was a Fairchild-based processor. So that maybe did not use the 6809. But I do remember reading in the Boise Pete book that Motorola was influential in helping Tandy negotiate the contracts, because Motorola had a lot of experience negotiating contracts. So, and we know that the color computer became the Motorola reference design. So I don't know if you finished saying all of that, but when we come back from our little break here, if there was more to tell on what you were doing to help kickstart the color computer, wouldn't mind hearing a little bit of that. And then the other thing we're going to do after that is we're going to take a look at the latest color computer version of NitrOS-9, ease of use beta 2. But yeah, this has been really fascinating hearing all of the history and, more important, the present of OS-9, because you're dealing with all the challenges that any operating system or application would have right now: security, encryption, all the same challenges that Windows and Linux and Mac OS face right now with updating their protocols and everything else, because cyber threats are always increasing. So it's neat. I mean, it always has been a real operating system. Even on the color computer, it was a real operating system on that kind of a toy machine. But now, today, it's more of a real operating system than it's ever been, and it's doing real things. So it's really, really cool to hear.
We're going to have to remember that you said that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to take probably a minute and a half break. We're going to run some commercials to give everybody a chance to go potty, whatever you got to do. But we'll be back. But so was there more to tell on the CoCos?
No, I think that was pretty much it on the CoCo stuff. I mean, like I said, once I got them up and running and got their basic hardware talking, then I was back out of the loop again. Motorola got me my replacement parts the next day, which I never did figure out how they did that. But obviously they had a stash somewhere, or some Motorola engineer lost a system.
Okay.
But after that, it's I recognized the product once the color computer came out. It's like, oh, that's what I was working on a year or so ago. Once I helped them get started and we actually got their hardware sort of talking, then at that point I dropped out of the loop. And, Motorola was then working with them from that point on.
Neat. Well, it's been great, and you're welcome to hang out. We got more to talk about, but we will just take a break, and we really appreciate all the time you spent with us and all the information you've shared. So we'll be back, folks, in just a few. Thank you.
Hi, it's Ron Delvo, Timberman, and this is CoCoTALK.
How does it feel? I'm still believing.
What if you could go back in time to just the right moment and ensure that Tandy won?
You definitely earned this office.
Thank you. Yes, you're too kind.
Oh, I'm much happier breaking stuff. Life has been a dream.
But what if you went back to the wrong moment?
Gimme that. How do you even know what that was?
Listen, I don't really care about these blueprints. I just want...
Say, who are you? You want to spy for Commodore or something, are you?
Just move!
Oh.
Hey, hold the elevator! Hold the...
Stop right there!
Whoa, no need for guns, no need for guns!
So, Mr. Anders, it seems you have stumbled upon my little secret. There is no point in waiting for security. I think you are about to have an accident.
Okay, no!
CoCo. Forever? Spring-ish 2018.
My fellow Americans, Australians, Canadians, Europeans, and all of you ands, I'm calling on all y'all to help us make the world great again by visiting the Retro Swag Shop at 8bit256.com, where you can get yourself a coffee mug like this with a little cute cartoon character that says, I'm a CoCo nut. You could also get yourself a coffee mug like this with a Color Computer 3 that says, I'm a CoCo nut. You could get yourself a deluxe travel mug like this with the CoCoTALK logo on it. You might even be able to get yourself a DVD like this with over 2 hours of gameplay goodness. It is time for us to rise up and make the world great again by enjoying some quality retro merchandise and CoCo nostalgia. So please visit 8bit256.com and let's make the world great for the color computer. Thank you very much.
CoCoTALK is brought to you in part by Placeblex Dietary Supplement. Placeblex. We think it works, so will you.
It's a Radio Shack Merry Christmas.
This year, I needed to give a real family pleaser.
Honey, please help me with this budget.
How about a new game, Dad? Please.
And I found it. Radio Shack's Color Computer 2. On sale for just $99.95. It entertains, educates, manages, it's expandable, and affordable. Now that really pleases me.
The Color Computer 2. Sale priced for Christmas. Only at Radio Shack.
We now return you to CoCoTALK.
All right, we're back. And thank you, everybody. That was a great segment, and I hope the segment doesn't have to end. But we're going to be talking more about OS-9 here. I need to update the bug real quick, right? So now we're going to be talking about NitrOS-9 Ease of Use Beta 2, which is one of Curtis's pet projects. So
And Bill
Noble, and with our beta testers out there, like Grant Leedy's been working on the alpha testing with you. So has Ron Delvaux and a few others. So So Curtis, you want to give us a little history on what prompted the what do we call it now? The ease of use version of NitrOS-9. It was inspired by someone.
Yeah, I can summarize that in 2 words. Nick Marentes.
Nick Marentes, a big.
Throw our Australian into the bus.
Actually, I'd add a 3rd word, whining, but yeah.
That's right. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do just to get people moving.
You should play a spot.
I know. I was trying to, but the Nick Marionettes clip. Yeah, that's probably somewhere in the playlist, but it's up to the gods of playlist order when that comes up. Yeah. So tell us a little history. So obviously Curtis Boyle, for those who don't know, you and Bill Noble and Wes Gale were the driving force behind the original NitrOS-9 version, and the main factor of that was it was optimized for the 6309, which is the better one. So you want to take it from there?
Sure. Yeah. When the secret features of the 6309 chip by Hitachi were revealed to North America in 1992, it was sent over in one of the lists. But basically, the chip had been out and discovered to have these extra features in Japan back in 1988. So 4 years later, we finally heard about it in North America. And then I think Chris Burke came out with Power Boost first, which was kind of a patch to just massage the stack to match the interrupts the way the 6309 native mode or emulated mode handled them. So you could use the extra registers and TFMs and stuff, but it didn't kick it in native mode. So it got some speed ups in specific parts, but it didn't generally speed up the whole thing. And then what we did, starting in 1992, was that we disassembled all of OS-9, not realizing Kevin Darling and others had already done that before. But we basically disassembled everything and got everything running in native mode stack. And then we were able to kick in native mode so you get that 10 to 15% speed increase across the board, and then start doing the 639 specific optimizations. And that became a commercial product from 92 till about 2000, maybe 1999, somewhere in there. And then Wes had already been out of it for a while. Alan DeCock joined us. So it was 4 of us Canadians doing this project. It was sold through Northern Exposure. So there was a 5th one, if you want to count Colin Mackay. But eventually real life just got too busy, and some of us were getting a bit burned out on it because we've been kind of devoting our lives to it. So we released it publicly around the 2000, 2001 mark. So Boise and a bunch of others took it over, and it's on GitHub and everything else. And then we kind of got coursed back into it thanks to Nick, because Nick is always complaining that OS-9 was hard to understand and hard to get set up, and if you had different bits of hardware, it was hard to get the hardware working properly, etc. So he's been bugging us for years about doing an ease of use, or at least proper documentation for ease of use, or something to make it easier for people that are new to it. And after a 15-year hiatus, I finally decided, you know what, you're right. Maybe I should try to do something about that. So that's what kickstarted the project around when I was 2016, 2017 when we first started getting serious about it. And then it's been in some sort of a private alpha for a few versions where we had certain people that would kind of apply to us to test it. But then we were discovering after a while that it wasn't enough testing. We needed to get it more wide. So once the beta program started, it became public. And this is the beta 2 release. So this is the second fully public release. We've now set up a web page for it as well as the FTP server. I actually remembered to post about it on Facebook and Discord and the list. So hopefully we'll get some more testers on it. And its main purpose is to make it easier to use. It's going to be a pre-set up version where you download a hard drive image and you just run it. Now, at this time, we're still limiting it to the CoCo SDC and the emulators because we want to get all the other bug fixes and optimizations done with one small core set of hardware to support. And then once that kind of gets all caught up, then we're going to expand it and start adding hard drive drivers and all the other specialized stuff. Hopefully GIME-X support and a few other things in the future. So this last beta 2 here was a couple of bug fixes. The 6809 version, because the graphics driver has gotten past 8K, as of 3.2 or something like that, when Boise and Robert Galt and the others were doing it, it now has had a bit of a bug where if you tried to load in the system, GraphDrive would briefly take a full 16K out of your system map, which, considering your system map's only 64K and you've got every other part of the OS-9 kernel in it, it would run out of room. And you had to shrink your boot file to be able to get it to boot on a 609 system. 609 version was still small if it didn't hit this problem, but it would eventually. So Bill, one of the fixes he did in this one is he actually got it so it does everything external to the system app. So now that restriction's gone. The 6809 version now has all the same device descriptors the 639 version has. Both versions now can handle a full 16K GraphDrive, and we have already started expanding and optimizing stuff using the extra room. There's a lot more to come with that. Bill's already got some plans for the windowing system. I've got some plans for the windowing system to add in. It's a couple other minor bug fixes we did this release. We fixed a couple utilities. There was a couple that we had slightly older versions in that shouldn't have been there in the first place. There's some other ones like ident we actually did patches to fix. The main thing we did this time around, though, is that I've been optimizing the 6809 version of GraphDrive, because the 609 version is quite a bit faster. And if you want to bring up those 2 videos I put on, Steve, you can kind of show everybody the difference between them.
Oh, okay. Keep talking then. I need a minute to find those.
Yeah. But basically, there was already been some patches for doing fastget put buffers and stuff like that for doing graphics that Kevin Darling did. It was called the Christmas graph drift patch, a Christmas patch from 1988 or 9, I think it was. And this is the first time since then we've actually sped it up even beyond that. We've learned a few things over the years. So we've sped that up. We spread up overlay windows a little bit. GP load, which is loading a get put buffer from a file, or just directly, you don't have to poke stuff in. You actually just load it in through display codes. That's a bit faster. And full width screen scrolling in both text and graphics modes for 609 is a bit faster. There's more optimizations to do for the 609 specifically. There's a couple of optimizations actually will help speed up the 6309 version as well, that I didn't have time to finish for my self-imposed due date of November 30th for the end of the month. So there's still lots more coming. And Bill's working on a new boot file editor that's all GUI based with mice and stuff. I've got to finish some other patches to the windowing system and the way the mouse works. Want to try to implement Nick and Sockmaster's high-res native joystick and mouse driver, so that it doesn't require high-res interface if you don't have one to access the entire 640 wide screen. So hopefully that'll work out too. But there's a ton of stuff. G-Shell's getting a ton of extensions and stuff. I've got a list of literally, I think, about 30 things right now that are planned. We knocked a couple off the list, but we keep adding to it too. So it just never.
Sure. All right. So I found 2 clips. One of them is scroll speeds, and one of them is get put buffers.
Yeah, and then I'll just put a basic thing here. The get put buffers and the scroll speeds. Basically, I've got 3 windows going across to show the different situations. The left one is beta 1, 6809 version, which is basically the 3.30 release if you guys are used to running the distribution off the repo. The middle one is the beta 2 version of the 6809 driver, so that's got some of the speed ups that we just added into this beta that got released yesterday. And then the right-hand side is a 639 version, which hasn't had any real optimizations to it in beta 2 compared to previous. So in this case here, you're showing the screen for the scrolling. The top part, the blue ones, that's the hardware text scrolling. You can see the 609 is quite a bit faster. And the bottom one is running in a 4-color 640 mode window. So it's a 32K screen that's getting scrolled there. So, and it's basically just to show you a speed comparison that we've been increasing.
So left screen is 6809.
Beta 1.
Center screen is 6809 optimized, and right screen is 6309.
Yeah. And the top blue one is the hardware text mode, and the bottom one is the 640
graphics.
200 graphics mode.
Yeah.
So in the case of scrolling on the bottom, that's moving 32K at a time.
32K bitmap graphics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other demo is basically the get put buffers, with the far left showing basically the stock Christmas patch that I mentioned for Kevin Darling. The middle one is the new optimized one, and then the far right one is the 639, all running the exact same code. And this demo is written in Basic 09, so this is a basic program that's doing this. This isn't machine language. Or this one actually was a bit more impressive to me. The get put buffer speed on 609 is noticeably faster for these.
Yeah.
Not close to 639, but still, it's a nice speed jump. I think people appreciate that. And one thing, one reason I'm taking the time to do the 6809 stuff. I mean, I could concentrate 639 again like I did in the old days, but I want to have the fastest graphic subsystem we can come up with as a base level, that it doesn't matter if you have a 6809 or a 639, that people can assume you'll get at least this much speed. So if they want to start writing games, just using standard calls and stuff and not getting fancy, even in Basic 09, that you will have an opportunity to come up with something that actually does look fairly impressive. So that's kind of what we're steering towards.
Excellent. Yeah, because you think about it, if you can make the 6809 sing, and be smooth, then obviously it goes without saying that the 6309 is going to be even better. So if you start with that base optimization and then just kick it into overdrive, it's like, yeah, that's a great approach. I'm sure a lot of people who are hardware, not wanting to cannibalize their CoCo to desolder the CPU, to put in the socket, to put in that Hitachi chip. So there's those people who want to keep that purity would appreciate that. Jason Downs is asking, are the gimme sparkles fixed when you're scrolling? Are you doing gimme?
That was one of the things I have in my list that I didn't get to.
Okay.
I know how to fix it because we had it fixed at the last commercial release of 2.01, and some changes got removed over the years. I don't know exactly why, or maybe somebody didn't quite understand what the code was doing. They thought it was redundant or something, so they pulled it up. But we'll be fixing it.
Gotcha.
Hey, Curtis. So most of the time that you worked on OS-9 was through the mail list before Facebook ever came around, right? So
way pre-Facebook.
Yeah. So most of the time it was just through email that you collaborated.
Well, Bill and I actually we worked together, so we collaborated. We were actually our own beta testers because the company we worked for ran their entire printing system on CoCo OS-9. So once we did NitrOS-9, we discovered we could speed up printing and stuff, and actually gave us enough free time. We were running like 3 line printers, simultaneously from different windows, and assembling NitrOS-9 at the same time, and another one editing source in the 5th window. So we had alternate shifts too, because I would work 12 hours during the day and he'd work 12 hours in the midnight shift, and we would just pass code back and forth. And eventually when Allan got involved, then we started emailing stuff back and forth because Allan would do chunks of work on, and we would have to reserve who's working on what. Okay, Allan, you're working on graph drift. Bill, you're working on the hard drive driver, and Curtis, you're working on CC3IO or something like that. So we divvied it up. But at the beginning, the first, I don't know how many releases of it, Bill and I were literally working side by side, and we overlap our shifts to tell how far we got on doing something. Could you test this out while you're working tonight? So
wow. Well, it also sounds like now, right at the moment, the current version of OS-9, it's truly global, right? Because the 3 partnerships are in the 3 different what's the word? Are they continents, or you have North America, you've got Germany, which is in Europe, and then you've got Japan, which is in Asia. So are those 3 actual different continents? I'm geographically illiterate, but I think that's the right word, right? So it is truly global. So like you guys had a pretty cool distributed development process there, and OS-9 now it's a global.
Yeah, even NitrOS-9 is global. I mean, if you take a look at the source code, especially since we released it to the public, I mean, it's had Boise and Robert and others from the States. It's had Bill, me, Allan, et cetera, from Canada. But there's contributions from people in England. And,
where's Tormod at?
Yeah, he's in Europe somewhere too.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's global even with the NitrOS-9 project too.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. And I have a CoCo ready to boot it up whenever you're ready. Now, I think Steve Bjork, you mentioned you've got something to show off too. So, you're muted, Steve. Looks like you're still muted.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
In case the other people ordered them that Allan had posted.
Oh, the Radio Shack had a sale on T-shirts.
And I'm glad I ordered a size larger. They're kind of a little small, and I will have to heavily wash them with fabric softener.
Ah, okay.
They're the old rough fabric, but yeah, they actually work. They you could order something from Radio Shack and still get it.
Imagine that. Cool, very cool. So yeah, I'm going to switch over and I'm going to show off and so what I did is I went ahead and we're going to start from scratch, and we're going to show the whole thing off on a real piece of hardware here. So we're now in a CoCo 3. And
are you running 6309 or 6809 version?
I'm running the 6309. So I'm going to tell you what I did. And so this is proof positive that ease of use is user friendly, because I was able to download it. I extracted the zip file. It was a VHD, a virtual hard disk file. I copied that to the root of my SD card, which I've now booted up on my CoCo SDC. And now I'm going to, from scratch, we're going to load it, right? So when I get down here, you guys are going to see what the whole process. So it's 68, which is 68S. Is that it?
That's a 6809 version, yeah.
Oh, did I get the wrong version?
Well, either works. I mean.
All right, so I'm an idiot. Okay. Anyways, but I downloaded it, and it's on here, and we're going to boot it, right? So here we go. We are now booting. 2014. Loading some standard utilities. NitrOS-9 Level 2, Ease of Use Edition Beta 2, Influx, November 30th. So we need to make sure we put in the proper date. And who would have thought that, the CoCo would be Y2K compliant and we'd be typing in dates in...
There are still some bits that aren't. We have to fix it. The operating system itself is, yes.
So we got to make sure we get the time in here right. This is very important. We're doing important work here. So
is that UTC or?
No, it's your local time.
Loading 49 fonts. For the love of Pete, who thought we needed that many fonts, right?
And this part is actually a little bit faster. It's still slow because it's loading a ton of crap, but it's a little faster. That was one of the things we optimized.
Couldn't you make it an even 50, Curtis? Come on, 49 fonts.
Yeah, I could.
You're phoning it in at this point.
Font and it will hit 50. So. But that's
All
also
right.
loading like mouse pointers and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
All right. So now we're at our terminal 2 prompt. All right. We're at shell 2.2a. Shell
Still
plus.
32 column?
What's that?
This is still 32 column? What's up with
No,
that?
this is 40 column at this point.
40 column.
40 by 25 at this point.
So here's a couple of things. If you wish to change the monitor type, you can do it from the GUI G shell, or you could type in monotypes -X where you want to replace. So X would be RGB. So I could type in monotype, which it should be defaulted to that, shouldn't it?
It defaults to RGB at this point.
Okay. And then if I wanted this to jump to 80 columns, is that easier to do in the GUI?
Actually, if you want, there's 2 80 column windows running right now, so just hit clear.
Oh, hold on. We're multitasking. Ooh, blue and white. I like that. Oh, look at this. Yes, 80 columns. So this is window 1, and these high crisp images are courtesy of the switcheroo. And then here's window 2, terminal 06. Wow. So yeah, so look how quickly we just multitasked through all of that, huh? So now we want to go ahead and pull up the GUI, which is what you're doing for us novices who are not fluent or not wanting to spend the time to type our way through things. So I just type in G shell to bring up the GUI.
Yep.
I got to spell G shell right, apparently.
Yeah.
GSH.
Now hit shift right arrow. Okay, you can do it that way too. I'm trying to get you used to all the editing features there because I know you're used to how DOS does it. And there's a fair bit of the DOS stuff in there. So.
Okay. And so now we've got our GUI. I'm using my deluxe joystick to move the mouse pointer around. And it doesn't quite go to the bottom of the scroll
I haven't
bar.
patched that yet. I almost got that done before the deadline.
Okay.
Maybe I shouldn't impose deadlines on myself. Maybe I should just impose deadlines based on what I want done versus when.
Yes. All right. So if I want to make this, if I want to make this 80 column, what do I do? I click on the little square thing here.
Go to the view menu.
Oh, view. Okay. So this is our GUI. Go to view 80 by 25 fat.
Yep.
Is that what I want? Okay. So here we go. And then now if I want to look at some of the demo software, which is the main appeal to this right now, you can launch programs fairly plug and play. So where would I go from here?
DD, which is your default drive. That's the main hard drive.
Okay. So I'm going to double click DD. And we're browsing a window here.
I will enable the hourglass eventually so you can move it. I'll probably reduce how often it samples it so it doesn't slow down the load. But
okay. So we have apps, BBS, commands, data, defs, demos, docs, games.
Games, yeah.
GRFX apps. So
now, is your machine that you're running this on, is it 512 or is it 2 meg?
It's 512.
Okay. Just curious.
So what do you recommend I pull up here, Curtis?
Pull up demos.
Demos. Okay.
It's loading icons for.
Okay. So we got bounce, we got demo, we got GUI B demo, and we got SE maze.
Yeah. So bounce is the bouncing ball demo that was in that little video.
Okay. So should I run that?
Sure.
So I'm just going to double click it. And this is the one that, since I downloaded the wrong image, I could have sworn I downloaded the 6309. But
yeah, you'll get the middle speed on this one.
You get the middle speed, which, so this is the optimized 6809.
I haven't figured out exactly how much faster it is for this demo, but it's probably about 20-30% faster than the original.
The infamous bouncing ball demo that everyone felt was absolutely necessary to have.
And this program is a compiled basic 09 program. So like I said, this is all basic. There's no machine language subroutines whatsoever in here. Legal display codes. It's kind of cheating. It's doing page flipping. That's another thing you can do with high res OS-9. What it's doing is it's sleeping 1/30th of a second between each page flip because of that sparkly bug you were talking about earlier until we actually get it tied properly into the clock module so it does it properly. So what it's basically doing here is it's got a pre-drawn set of 8 balls. at various rotations with a bit of the grid around the outside built into the get buffer.
Ah.
It's got the Mona Lisa one. So what it does is on the screen you're not looking at, it draws the ball first, and then it draws the Mona Lisa so that it always goes over top of the ball. You'll actually notice it slips down a little bit when it's drawing both, because it has a check. Is the ball where the Mona Lisa is? If it's not, go full speed. If it's under the Mona Lisa, then draw the Mona Lisa over top of it.
Okay.
But basically it's moving about, I can't remember what the size of the buffer. It's 80 something by 70, 16 color.
Okay.
So it's a pretty good size get put buffer it's doing. And like I said, it's actually only drawing it once every 1/30th of a second. Actually has a sleep call to tell the system to go to sleep to let the video hardware settle between each page flip.
Wow. Cool. How do I get out of it? Break?
Hold down the enter key.
What is it?
Hold down the enter key.
Hold down the enter key. Okay.
There you go.
Cool. I just tried using my PC mouse here for a second, but yeah, so that's. I was so fooled into thinking this was a real operating system, I tried moving my computer mouse.
RS-232 pack with a serial mouse, you can do that. So.
Yeah. All right, what's next?
You can run demo itself. That's the built-in multi-view demo that came with multi-view.
Okay.
This one you can resize. I won't let you do the very bottom of the screen, unfortunately, but.
So how do I resize it? Okay, so if I want to do this. Demos. Point to demos on the menu bar. Okay. Circles, lines, bars, quit, huh? Oh, and it does it within the size of the window that I defined, huh?
OS-9 and NitrOS-9 Level 2 for the CoCo actually has built-in scaling, which you can turn on or off. Like if you want absolute coordinates within whatever size window you got, you can do that. But you can also say, pretend everything's 640 or 320 wide, depending which mode you're in. No matter what size you make the window, and it'll scale everything, all your commands within that. So that's what it's doing in this case.
Wow. Ooh, I like it.
And the bar command is optimized too. I don't know if you've tried it in extended basic or super extended basic. It's a hell of a lot slower there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is fast. Yeah. Very cool.
And I might be able to speed that up too. I haven't fully looked into it yet. But
yeah, lines are pretty quick. And am I in RGB mode? Because these colors are kind of wonky.
Yeah, this is what the default color set that Tandy picked. Where the first four colors are black, white, blue, and green, which is kind of gross.
Yeah.
So one thing I'll be adding to G-Shell, I haven't done it yet, is that you'll notice why I've got a grayscale here. I mean, you can change it to more like an Amiga style if you want like white, black, red, and blue or something like that. But I'm going to have it so that you can set each individual application so that it can either use the system standard palettes, which is what that demo you just ran did, which is the ugly green, blue, white, black, or you can tell it to inherit whatever you've set G-Shell's palettes to. So then if you fire up some of these apps or calendar, you can say use the grayscale, or if you decided to pick some other colors, you can actually override it.
Okay. Cool. But should I run GUI B demo or no?
You can if you want. I mean, we've demonstrated that, I think, before. It's a Basic 9 subroutine package for doing a bit fancier stuff. And actually, Bill is thinking about trying to implement some of this right into the main operating system itself.
Look at this. This is a full mouse pointer.
Yep.
GUIB. Okay, GUIB can create different types of windows. Raised, dropped, etched, carved, frame, picture frame, and shadowed. GUIB also allows the user to divide the screen in horizontal, vertical, etched lines. All right, so it's a library, huh? Raised, etched, framed, dropped, carved, picture frame, shadowed, continue.
Need to get Hugo DeFort to contribute to this. He might have some cool ideas.
Yeah, and so the mouse pointer is just inverted, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the fastest way to do it, and
yeah, it works.
I'll see if we can actually change that to have full overlay. But
GUIB can also create various types of squares. Oh, this is cool. Yeah, so this is a little GUI tool, huh?
Yeah, and basically it's a Basic 9 library, so you can call functions in here to do all these types of drawing. You see the little dilapidated diamond. That's because some scaling stuff was changed in NitrOS-9 over the years that kind of broke it.
Okay.
Put that on the to-do list.
Yeah.
It is. It's on the queue list.
Vertical and horizontal scroll bars, huh? Ah, look at that, huh?
And that you can actually click on to move them around and stuff. So.
Yeah.
I mean, some of this functionality is built into the main operating system itself, but not quite as fancy as this. And one of Bill's projects is he's going to try to implement some of this stuff into the native operating system so that you don't need an external library. But that's going to take a bit of time. So.
Okay. Now here's your 80 column version of that. Yep. All right. So how do I get out of this?
You're just about done. So I think actually when you quit, you're done.
All right. Neat. Super neat. And then to get back up one level, what do I do?
You can click the close box.
Here in the top left-hand corner?
Or you can just click DD to go right back to the root directory.
Now, is these single clicks and not double clicks?
For those, yeah.
Okay. So we're able to fairly quickly boot up to an OS-9 prompt, type in G shell, get to a GUI file manager, which makes launching software a little bit easier. You've added icons, so it's just kind of, this is like basically like this is like a very Windows 3.1 type experience right now, you know.
Yeah, I mean, even the AIF files it uses to determine what icon to display for what programs and what extensions is kind of like the old PIF was in Windows 3. If you remember those.
Yeah. So this is taking a little while to build here. I guess it must be a lot of stuff in games.
Yeah, this is something I have to look into. Basically what happens here is that it's reading and it goes, is it a normal file? Well, then it knows what to kind of display the generic icons. But if it's a custom one, it has to load the file in to figure out what icon needs to get displayed, go load the icon, and then associate extensions with that. And in the games directory here, you've got quite a few icons. So it has to load all of those individually. Yeah. I got to figure out a way to speed that up.
Well, why don't you just do like Windows does? Just do right mouse click, properties, and then hit change icon.
Well, right now, right mouse click is broken, so
I'll hear excuses here.
So there are actual preloaded games too. So Rick Adams' Shanghai is here, and this one is also patched for the alternate color set, where you can get to that without finding the hidden pixel, right? Yep. Rogue is here, and Rogue is one that you've been working on and have more work to do as well.
Yeah, like right now I've patched it. Like the original Rogue, if you want to run it in a graphics window, you can resize the window, but if it's not running full screen, it defaulted to the standard font, just text. Okay. I've patched it so that no matter what size graphic window you run it in, it'll use the graphic font.
Okay. Now I notice you've got an interbank folder here. Does this run right now?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
Some of those games, if you do a bunch of change directories and change execution directories and stuff, will run. The whole point of ease of use is that you shouldn't have to worry about how to do all that.
Right.
So because the extensions we're adding is to make that a hell of a lot.
The whole thing with the interbank was that was more VDG based, and there's something different with certain VDG based games to work.
Yeah, basically you have to make sure it launches in a VDG based window, which means you have to change the window type or actually hard code a certain window descriptor name, which you don't want to do. You want to make it generic so you can just double click and fire up multiple ones in a row. And that's part of the G shell changes that are planned.
Okay, and I notice you've got some of the Sierra games in here. So you've got Biosphere, Black Cauldron, Carmen Sandiego, Flight Sim 2, Gold Rush, Interbank, Coronis Rift, King's Quest 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Come Guy, 2B Ninja, Laser Shoot Larry. So the Sierra games, do those plug and play too, or they have some of the same?
They're not plug and play yet. They're in there right now because they're going to be once I fix G shell.
Okay.
So it's kind of like preparing for the...
Yeah. Should I fire up Rogue so people can see what's been improved on it right now? All right, so we're going to double-click Rogue. Now, does this give me an opportunity to size it initially? Yeah. And I kind of want to size it maximize. Like, why would you want to be a weenie and only have a partial screen?
Well, if you want to run the clock or something so you can make sure you're not running late to get to work because you're too busy playing Rogue.
Yeah. Epics. Press spacebar. Rogue's name, and I'm going to go ahead and say that my name is Grant. All right, and so this, hello Grant, welcome to the Dungeons of Doom, and this defaults with the font, like where before you had to run a different program from a command line to load in the graphics font. I remember that.
And if you resize it, it still wouldn't do it. It would just use text. Now, if you did resize it, it still.
Holy shit, it's fast, dude. I guess because Grant's lost a lot of weight now, he's quite speedy. Look at this guy here. So. That son of a bitch just ran from one side of the room to the other, man.
Stevie, you're in fast mode too. You're in fast mode too, so it means when you tap an arrow key to move, it will go to the next part where you would stop, like a door or a wall or something. You can shut that off by hitting Shift F, and then you
Shift.
Can
Okay, so now if I want to, single step my way through here, I can.
Yeah.
All right. And this is just text, right? So this is 80 column text, but it's in a graphics mode, so the fonts can be redesigned, right?
Yeah. You're currently running in the 640 by 192 by 4 color mode.
Okay. And so the fact that this guy looks like a stick figure, he's really just a single character on the screen, text character. What does B mean? What does B mean?
Bat.
It's a bat.
The monsters are all
How do
letters.
I fight?
Just run into them.
Oh, yeah? You swing and a miss. Swing batta. You barely missed the bat. I tell you, I'm on the edge of my seats here. I noticed you hit the bat, and I must have killed the bat. You've defecated. Oh, you defeated the bats. Reading is fundamental, apparently. Is there anything you have to do to run on DriveWire? Mark Bosley is asking.
Like I mentioned before, we're keeping the base hardware platform just the SDC and the emulators for now, just to make it easier to debug. If I introduce a whole bunch of different things at once, it becomes hard to figure out where's the bug. Is it a DriveWire issue? Is it a SDC issue or whatever? It does work with DriveWire. I mean, Bill runs it that way himself when he's doing his development stuff. So, I mean, if you're somewhat familiar with NitrOS-9, you can definitely run it off DriveWire. And I think there's some other distributions like Barry's done and a few others that actually are natively supporting DriveWire. We are going to be adding that, but like I said, I want to keep the number of different things to a minimum until we get everything fully up to where we want it to be, so it makes it easier to debug.
Yeah, and now were these procedurally generated where it was always different?
Yes, it's completely randomized every time.
Okay. Now E is a bad guy?
Yeah, every letter is a bad guy.
Emu. An emu. Isn't that like a little freaking llama looking thing, an emu?
It's kind of like an ostrich, isn't it?
I don't know. A kestrel.
Yeah, they look more like an ostrich.
So I would imagine the challenge becomes that because it's using the letter K for a bad guy, if you were to change the letter K to be like a picture of, or letter B to be a bat, then you can't print the letter B on the screen, right? So you almost have to use non-alpha characters if you wanted to update this to use pictures for monsters.
That is a plan I have. I've actually talked to David. We're trying to devise 26 unique-looking monsters when you've only got an 8x8 pixel grid. It's a bit of a challenge. But because we added extended font support, like the standard fonts in OS-9 originally for graphic fonts was supported the same 128 character set that the Gimme does.
Is this a frickin' Cobra here? What is this thing here?
That's a scroll.
Oh, okay. All right, how do you like pull up your inventory to know what you've picked up and all that kind of crap?
For inventory.
Oh, that's how quaint. Oh, the keyboard, how quaint. I have 2 rations of food, a scroll titled Fim Naf Hoff Juza. Is this a word scramble problem here, or what's going on?
When you first find scrolls, they just have random gibberish words, and then you have to identify the scroll or read it and then try to guess what it means and then name it yourself. If you can guess. A
plaid potion, an orange potion, a gold potion, chainmail. How do you equip armor, or the fact that you're carrying it mean you're already equipped?
Well, it says being worn, because right now you're carrying 2. You've got a chainmail and you've got a ringmail. You're currently wearing the ringmail.
Okay. Attack +1, mace, weapon in hand, short bow, and arrows. Yeah, I have no idea how to work this. So how would you try to read the scroll or learn the scroll?
R for read.
R for read. And this is going to automatically read whatever I have?
It'll, I think, give you a list of what you have.
Okay, now I hit B. Okay, now what? You read the scroll, it vanishes. The scroll is an identity scroll, and now it's a scroll of identity.
Yeah. Now in this case, because you don't know what the potions are, if you pick one of the potions, it'll tell you exactly what type of potion it is.
So like a plaid potion. If I hit C for plaid potion.
Yeah.
Okay, and now I have to hit I for inventory. Okay, a potion of poison. Ooh, so I go back to.
Don't drink that one.
Okay.
But and you can throw it at a monster.
Now, if I want to identify something else again, can I do that?
Not until you get another identify scroll.
Oh, so it's a single use, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, there's a little bit to learn how to play this game, but I know this game is very popular with a lot of people. They love the Rogue.
Cross-platform 2 is on just about everything.
Yeah, and this one didn't it like originate on a mainframe or something like that originally, or something like that?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so now I've reached a dead end here, allegedly, right?
Well, it could be a secret passage, but unlike Daggerath, we can just walk through it. You have to actually search for it to find the door, which is what the S key does. And another thing that Rogue has is if you punch a number before you do a command, it'll do it that many times. So if you hit like 9S, it'll search 9 times in a row because sometimes it takes a few tries. And it may be a dead end. I mean, I don't know for sure.
Okay, because it's random.
Yeah. You can also use that for moving. Like if you hit 9 and then hit the left arrow, you run 9 spaces until you run
out. Okay. So for those Rogue fans, it's on the EoU distribution. It's there. I just got a frickin' Kestrel. Did I kill his ass? I guess I did. He says I'm frickin' a badass. My name is Grant. I'm a frickin' badass. All right. What is this thing here? Oh, these are stairs?
Yeah, F1 to go down.
And what is this? Another frickin' bad guy? An emu. All right. So F1 goes down?
Yeah.
Did it? I hit F1. I'm still here. You sure it's F1?
Can you hit? Oh, there you go.
There you go. All right.
Yeah,
Cool.
That lag.
All right. So, yeah. All right. So we've seen enough of this. How do I get out of this now? I know I could hit clear.
Shift Q.
Shift Q. Do you wish to end your quest now? Yes. Yes. Thank you. You're too kind. All right. And now we're back in the ease of use. So there's lots of stuff on here. So if somebody wants to just double click around and play with some games and look at some demos, you've made it fairly easy for them.
Files you can view. There's some sound sample files, digitized sound samples you can play.
So if I go back to DD.
Yeah.
You really got to work on this.
Did you remember to put Christy Brinkley on there?
No, I leave that as an exercise up to the user.
All right, so where should I go? Pictures, sound, rainbow?
Go to sound. Do you have your sound shared that we can hear it? Or
should be, yeah. This is a double click here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you just select it, then you can select the files menu and do stuff on the files.
Okay, I got CoCoTALK. Wow. So we want to play this?
Sure.
Now this one I won't be able to hear the whole thing because I don't have 2 megs, right?
Right.
Okay.
It'll play as much as you have free memory for.
All right. So we're gonna sit here and try to play the CoCoTALK. Nice. Can you guys hear it?
I can. Yeah.
This is CoCoTALK, the world's leading live chat show, not hosted by Grant Leedy. Very cool. So we got a little sampling there. We got to hear CoCoTALK as played on a CoCo. We got to have more cowbell. We got to hear what this one here is. So let's see. Ding ding. Okay. So game over. Is this Bill Pullman? Game over, man. Game over. Is this the? Game over, man. Yeah, it's been a little down. Kind of slowed down a little bit. David Letterman.
Yeah, some of the ones have embedded speed option.
Yikes. Okay.
Yeah, some of them have embedded
icons.
speed options rather than actually using what the original file had, and they were hard coded for 609. So the 6809 versions right now are running a bit slow. I have to go and patch some of those back.
Okay. So Nick was saying
let the file format itself tell you. Like the WAV files usually just read the header and go, if that's the speed I need to play it at, like what hertz rate. Whereas some of these Mac ones, because they're really old style, were actually hard coded for the CoCo 609 years and years ago for saying time delay this much between a sample and CPU cycles. So right now they're playing 609 based speed estimates on a 6809, so it's a bit slow.
Okay. How do you go back one step though? Will backspace take me back, or if I want to go back one level?
Oh, just go back. Yeah, that little closed box right there.
Okay. Which in this case here, it might have been faster just to click on DD anyways.
That's about the
All
same.
right. So that was sound. So now we want to look at pictures. You have some graphic samples in here?
Yep. Now, I did get pointed out a bug. The extension, like G-Shell's based on the 3-character extensions. So unfortunately, I've got .Mac right now for Mac Pictures, and I've got .Mac for sound. So it gets hopelessly confused if you actually try to switch between the two. So I have to fix that on the next beta.
Okay.
On my part.
I got to say, it loads things up really quick.
Well, the thing is, it loads up all these icons the first time it encounters them. If you go back out to back inspector, it's much faster because it goes, oh, I know what those are.
So what do I need to click on here?
One of the folders. Now, GIF, only one of them will display properly because the other ones are meant for a new version of View I haven't quite finished yet.
Okay.
MGE is like Color Max. VEF is a native OS-9 format. So if you want to
just tell me when to pick. I have no idea what I'm looking
sure.
for.
MG.
These are some Color Max photos, huh? Title, Victory, Victory 2, Win 2.
Yeah, pick one, whatever.
You need a new icon there.
It's a Mona Lisa in the dark was what it looks like there. So, oh, Shanghai title screen. Okay, now because it's not full here, as part of it's cut off on the bottom.
Yeah, that's because it's a 200 line, and the gimme actually displays 199 due to a little bug in the gimme chip.
Ooh. Okay, cool. And you just click to get out of that. Okay, that's cool. So this is basically you double click it and it launches a built-in image viewer.
Yeah.
And that's the Victory Dragon.
Yeah, that's the final one I think you used in the game, if I remember. I think the original Amiga version, which has a much bigger dragon, is actually in there. One of those pictures too.
Victory 2, MG.
I don't remember which is which, but yeah, that's the original Victory screen from the Amiga.
Okay.
The one that Rick tried his damnedest to fit into the ROM size stand he said they wanted, and he couldn't quite do it.
Okay. And then we have a Victory 3. No fire. Okay. We got with and without fire.
Yeah.
Interesting. So we're looking at pictures on a CoCo. Okay, that's in a window. Okay. Cool. Now
Yeah,
if I go...
so there's just some tweaking, like I said, I have to do there. The View utility for doing GIFs that are smaller than the full size of the screen isn't quite working yet. It is working on the 609 custom version that I do have on there, but it's got some other bugs I got to fix first. So it's a state of flux, just like the rest of the project, basically.
Okay, this is Color Max 3, CM3.
CM3 is CoCo Max 3.
CoCo Max 3. Okay.
And these are actually some screenshots that are part of the Pack Dude 3D Monster Maze RS-DOS game.
Okay. Cool.
Which I pulled actually from his source code.
Neat. So we got image viewing. What's VEF? That's the OS-9 native format?
Yeah.
Empty tiles. Ah.
Allan Batteiger did this when he converted, like, builded the original port of Shanghai to OS-9, and then Allan added in the ability to create your own custom tile sets, and this is the template you use to fill in what you draw, and then you can import that into Shanghai and play with your own tile sets.
Okay. Cool. And then if I wanted to switch terminals, I could hit clear and switch my terminals.
Yep. If you type proc in any of those, you can actually see all the processes currently running.
That's pretty fast on the switching.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a 6809 version. It's actually faster than the 6309.
Neat. Well, ease of use, everybody. You've seen it here. Is there anything else we need to show off?
Not like I said, there's not too much new. This is more bug fixes and some patches and stuff, and speed ups. The command line history and stuff there, I guess, since you
yeah. Okay, and one more thing, so we don't put Ron to sleep. But Ron, where is that planetarium program that you use in here? Is that under apps?
It's in apps.
Under apps, I want to take a look at that planet thing that Ron likes. I want to be able to pull up a picture of my anus.
Do it again.
Planet engine. So I just double click the one that's called Planet.
Exactly. Then you have to resize like you did with the other one.
That's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
You can change that if you want to force it so it always comes the same size. You can change the AIF to do that. It's just that any program that actually allows you to resize, because some are hard coded for a full size screen, then at least you can decide yourself which way you want to do it.
Okay, and because I put in the actual date and time and year, when I boot it up. This should be giving me some real stuff, right, Ronnie?
Yes.
Yep, you should see the moon somewhere along the line.
So
there.
when I look at my anus, it's going to look exactly like it does now, right? So
Depends if you're
That's
good
an app I don't want to see.
if you're good at doing the paperwork.
Stevie, you would probably block out the universe.
And there's the moon.
Is that
And
the
the sun.
Where's the moon here? Is this the moon and the sun here? These little ones?
The moon is actually it's in front of it. It's already set. It would be before Venus, to the far right.
Okay, so here's Venus. So here's the sun. I see the sun here.
Sun and Mercury's next to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Mars. To the
Now,
left.
can we zoom in on this?
No, but you can go up to planets. Click on planets, and you can zoom in on the planets.
And I think it shows you the phase of the planet as viewed from Earth too, doesn't it?
Yeah. There's Uranus.
There's Uranus.
Featureless.
Okay. Click to exit. And if I want to look at what Mars looks
Jupiter's
like right now.
good to see.
Jupiter?
Yeah.
Oops, I just hit Saturn by mistake.
Well, Saturn's cool too.
Yeah. And this is showing us where it should be in its rotation right now, right?
Yeah, the angle of the rings. At some point in the future, the rings will be straight across. You won't be able to see them.
Hmm. Oh,
Yes,
okay.
this is the
So
angle
it's
you can see them right now if you had a telescope on it.
okay. So right now it's kind of tilted, but eventually it would straighten outward, just be a straight line across the middle of the circle and stuff.
And then it would flip downwards.
Now, does this support pinch and zoom if I want to just kind of... No? I can't swipe or anything like that, or just stretch it out?
That's when we do the virtual reality update.
You know, just you get so used to the features of an operating system. I'm used to double tap and stretch and pinch and rotate, and none of that, huh?
Pinch and zooming keeps me awake.
Can I click on a planet? Like if I just wanted to see Venus, could I click on it?
No, go to settings. You can see the planets in their orbits.
Hold on. So what do I do? Display orbits.
Orbits.
So this is where they are right now, huh?
You see Pluto on the left there?
Yep.
Back a few years, Pluto was the 8th planet, and Neptune was the last planet because the orbit goes inside the orbit. It was actually closer. You see?
Oh,
what I
really?
mean?
So the rings would, so the Pluto ring would have been inside of the Neptune ring?
Yeah, it's actually on the inside. For about 20 years or so, 24 years, it was closer than Neptune.
Yeah, out of its 248-year rotation around the sun.
Now, has this been updated to recognize if Pluto is actually a planet or a planetoid, or
it shows as a planet?
It shows as a planet. Okay,
Yeah,
so
it proves that Neil deGrasse Tyson's wrong. Is what it does.
That's what it does. Amen, brother.
And I hope he hears that.
Now, will this? Could we change the time on this to be able to see Halley's Comet if we told it we happen to be at a time where one of those things where it would show you that stuff?
It won't show up because it's not programmed to show it.
Okay. Will this one show the planet killer? Like when we're going to get hit by the big one, it's going to take us out. Can we see that coming?
That's the only extra feature it does have.
The doomsday meteor that's going to...
You could do a screen print and draw all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, just kind of like you did with your high score, right there, Mr.
Exactly. Exactly. You are good.
Which honestly, I gave you full benefit of the doubt when you
Yes,
first
you
posted
did.
it until you came back and said, "Hey,
pictures lie." I tried to give you hints, but
it's okay. Listen, I'm pretty dense. All right, so now that's cool. So yeah, I mean, the whole idea of the ease of use version is processes are still active. What processes?
Well, look
are
at all the stuff it needs to make that work.
Oh, this is still active. So how do I get out of that?
Hit the mouse button. Now you should be able to quit G shell.
Now I should be able to quit G shell. So this is ease of use beta 2, easy to download, extract it to a zip file.
Extract.
It is a hard drive image that will work on VCC or MAME, or it will run on a real CoCo SDC as on a real CoCo.
One thing I will mention is if you're running on the SDC, you just need the hard drive image. If you're running on MAME or VCC, you need the floppy boot image because it has the virtual hard drive driver that those emulators use. So it has a little floppy boot first, and then it kicks onto the hard drive.
Okay.
That's what I got to work with VCC.
I added some pictures to mine by using the GUI there, and I'd hit file, and then I'd hit copy, and type in the commands to take from drive D.
Oh, speaking of commands, did you want me to show off the command line thingy that you were talking about, Curtis, where you can...
Well, yeah, it's more for your benefit because I know you much prefer having command history and command line editing. So. Okay,
so give me an example of something I should do right now.
Hit the up arrow, for example. That goes back to your history.
Okay, like G shell. G shell, that's all I got right now.
Apparently that's the only command you've typed on that particular screen.
Yeah, so if I clear over, there was one of them here that, okay, I did proc, I did dir, I did proc and dir.
Yeah.
Okay.
The one difference between this and Windows by default, you hit return when it's displayed and it immediately executes command. On this one, you have to hit shift right arrow first to get to the end of the line. It's kind of a mix between which is better. It's just whatever you're used to, basically, because this makes it easier for you to chop a line off.
If you want to edit before.
Now let's do a slightly longer command. Do dir space / /dd / commands.
Dir space / /dd / commands. Is it CMDS?
Yeah.
Okay. So here are our operating system commands.
Yeah. And games and everything else. It's quite a few.
Quite a few.
There are.
Yeah.
Wow.
So now if you hit the up arrow, and you can right arrow, left arrow to go through it. Shift left arrow, shift right arrow takes you to the very beginning, the very end, if you want to instantly jump. And then control arrow, left arrow, and right arrow will insert and delete.
Control. Okay. So if I wanted to, instead of, I hit control right arrow?
Right arrow to insert, and control left arrow to delete.
I gotta find a name control key, and that deletes. Okay, so if I want to delete a bunch of crap here, I could do that.
Yeah. So that gets quite convenient when you got a bunch of things changing between directories and stuff, or changing commands with different options.
How many of Nick Marenti's games do we have here under the G shell?
None, but we have a couple of his icons.
We do have Nick Marenti's contributed icons, though.
Yeah, the trash can was his. The printer was very slightly modified by him, and some of the sound file, actually most of the sound file ones, I think were his too.
And was the trash can inspired by his feelings of where OS-9 should be placed?
That's what OS-9 is.
It's probably important to note, how many programs did you just run? How many times did they crash? And straight off, EoU is a success.
Yeah.
I mean, I would never have been able to do all that back in the previously to this.
Can you show us Easter eggs?
Easter eggs?
Yeah, there's not a ton of them in there. I'll mention one other thing here, just because you happen to be on this particular screen. This is actually using the 6-character font, so you're actually in 106 column mode right now.
Okay.
So you have 106 characters across by 25 down. As far as the Easter egg in the shell only shows up if you've fired up a shell for the very first time. So we'll have to create a new one because you've typed in all the various shells you've got going right now. So if you want to just type shell space I equals.
Hold on, I got to find out how to do equals on the CoCo keyboard. Okay.
/ W4 ampersand.
Okay.
Okay, hit return. And then hit clear until you get to the W4 window.
It's W1, W2, W4.
Hit shift right arrow.
Shift right arrow. NitrOS9.org. So that's the buffer that's already been put in there, huh?
The original Micro one actually had K Kaplan, R Dog, and I can't remember the third guy's name. Some of the original developers of OS-9. Probably Allan could have told us better. And then the NitrOS-9 commercial version actually had B Noble, my name, and I think Allan, or was it Wes? I can't remember. But we had our names as a bit of a vanity Easter egg.
No graphic with your large logo behind your head?
No. I have much more better things to use all the extra RAM for than that. This just takes a few bytes.
So I believe somebody's asking, is this captured? This is this is captured from a CoCo3. I'm running this through the switcheroo, RGB to SCART, and then SCART to HDMI, and it's an HDMI capture. So real CoCo3, and this is what the switcheroo looks like, right? You get our, it looks pretty good. Neat. And I've actually, so now I just need to download the right version because my dumbass downloaded the wrong frickin' version, right? So,
it's just a classic. Oh well.
Yeah. Brian says he just got the T-shirt from the Radio Shack website. Nice. Yeah, it's like I've tried to stay away from using any of these trademark copyright logos to try to put on a T-shirt. I just figure it's probably best not to do that. But that's cool that they're out there.
You don't want to be in jail.
No, so this has been a really heavy OS-9 episode. And what are we going on right now for time? How long have we been doing this nonsense?
Almost 3 hours.
Almost 3 hours. And my head hasn't exploded. I gotta say, listen, OS-9. Not everybody's a fan of OS-9, and I think part of it is just lack of exposure or lack of understanding of it. Hopefully
it is difficult to set up, especially if you had custom hardware. I mean, it was not easy. And Bill's working on a program to fix that too, to make it easier. And then, the ease of use in general is to have everything pre-set up so that you don't have to worry about how to build AF files and what directories should be in what attributes.
So kind of like in a way, it's kind of like what Ubuntu can do for you, where you don't have to necessarily know a lot about Linux to be up and running with it. So with Ubuntu, you can install an OS, you can be at a desktop, you can be at a GUI and just kind of point and click. It's real easy to install software through a GUI. You can just search for a product and add it. You can use Ubuntu and never have to know how to use a command line interface at all.
Yeah. OS 10's the same way because you do have system.
So, but if you want to, under the hood, there is a whole Linux kernel. There's you can do bash and scripting and bin bash, all that kind of stuff. You can run Python. You can just do a variety of stuff on Linux if you want to. And the same here. So obviously you can now develop in here, right? You've got the basic 09, which you're continuing to
the assemblers
optimize.
Are in there, the C
assemblers are in there. So
are we like in the early days of OS-9, NitrOS-9, basically? It's going to mature.
In the early days, I guess, of the ease of use version. I mean, NitrOS-9's been out since '92, so.
So let me ask you this, Curtis. How are you developing for this? Are you cross-compiling? Are you using edtasm on the actual CoCo?
Well, it's not edtasm, but
right, whatever.
Yeah, the ASM assembler and Basic 09 I'm actually using natively on the CoCo itself. Now, I sometimes run an emulator, especially MAME because of the debugger if I'm trying to just disassemble or debug machine language code. And of course, you can unlock the speed, so you can tell it to run full throttle. And basically, if I'm assembling a really large program, then I'll usually tell it, run at 89 megahertz, assemble it. And GraphDriv, I think, takes about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes to assemble on a real CoCo3, and it takes about 4 to 5 seconds on VCC with it at max speed. So I'll do the assembly on that, and then I can actually run it on the real CoCo. But the code is fully capable of assembling on the real CoCo, and I have done that, especially on smaller bits, because it doesn't take that long to assemble a small program like a Hello World type thing is actually quite quick. Basic 09 I pretty well all have done natively on the CoCo because I just run an editor in one window and just load it the other, and it just takes a second or two. There's no speed difference really.
So you don't think in 5 years NitrOS-9 will look completely different? I mean, there'll be.
What do you mean by completely different? I mean, I might improve the GUI some more.
Yeah, I mean, it'll just have a different look. I mean, you won't, when you go to G Shell, you won't necessarily go to a file system, right? You might go to 3 or 4 windows all in one. Maybe instead
So
of
are you asking, are we going to be booting to a desktop now, like Windows does?
That's the question.
Okay.
Oh yeah, no, you can actually do that right now if you just edit the startup file and just tell it to fire up G Shell on its own without you having.
But see, G Shell is basically it's a GUI based file browser, file launcher. It's not like a desktop.
It's like file manager and program manager.
So would OS-9 ever evolve to the point where you booted to a GUI based desktop and it was a GUI OS?
Well, you could. I mean, right now I have it defaulting so it fires up Shell, the text
shell, which is the
I
current.
could change that to run G Shell, and it'll automatically kick into G Shell, and the regular shell never shows up.
Right, but again, G Shell is not really a desktop based operating system. It's just a file manager. Would there be like a GUI based, like the equivalent of a Windows desktop or even a Windows 3.11 interface, where you could launch icons from program? I don't know. Is that what you're asking, Ron?
If you wrote a graphical GUI as your default startup program, then yes.
Okay, but has that ever existed? Has there been a GUI based, not G Shell, but has there been a GUI based way to use OS-9 as a quote unquote GUI OS, like the X Windows for Linux and stuff like that?
I mean, there's M Shell, but that's kind of a text based one. That's one Bill Pierce does.
So the multi-view was that?
Well, multi-view G Shell is part of multi-view. It's just this is fairly enhanced from the
stock. The only difference really then is those icons on the side for drives. If those weren't there and those you would call up later or something, that's the only difference, because otherwise, you have some, the view is different. You don't necessarily have a view on a, well, maybe you do on a file system. I guess...
basically, it's whatever you want to program, I guess.
So there hasn't been like
how you make your front end is up to you,
right? Because now the challenge becomes you create the killer desktop interface, but you've eaten up all the RAM. You can't run any apps, right? So
with 2 meg, you might be able to.
But it certainly looks good.
Yeah, G Shell doesn't suck. It's a
bit slow in certain spots, and I've got to try to figure out a way to
right. So speaking of 2 megs, how does 2 megs NitrOS-9 can address and work with all 2 of those megs?
Yeah.
No limitations other than the 8K MMU blocks, right? That's the only real
64K process space because it's
so when we start to talk about what Jim Brain's doing with the CoCo mem with 8 megs, what happens when you get into the 8 meg territory with NitrOS-9 is, from what I recall hearing, you still never access more than 2 megs of RAM maximum. So you have like a 6 meg RAM drive, or is there any way to extend RAM beyond 2 megs?
You could write a specialized driver. It would run slower if you're doing that because there's some extra bytes you got to write for the MMU every time you switch anything, which is anytime you task switch. Anytime the operating system is switching between tasks, multitasking, which is happening multiple times per second in the background always. That's why it's a real multitasking system. I have thought of a few other things to use the extra 6 meg and an 8 meg board for. RAM drive is one. You could also preload some sound files and stuff and play them out of there. In fact, if you wrote the driver allocation memory part properly, you could mix it. You could say, I want 2 meg for reserve for sound samples for my game. And I also want the other 4 meg to be a RAM drive because I'm doing assembling and stuff and I want it to run faster. OS-9 itself, or NitrOS-9 itself, because when it initializes itself when you boot it, it basically does all the memory allocation based on the first 2 meg. Also means you could make the RAM drive so that if you hit reset and restart NitrOS-9, it doesn't lose the contents. You could actually have it already there. So the next time you reboot, if we set some sort of little flag on the RAM drive to say, I'm initialized, I've got stuff on me, don't wipe me out, you could actually bring it back up with a totally different version, say switch between the 609 and 609 versions of NitrOS-9, reboot just by hitting reset and mounting the other image and then typing DOS, and you could actually have it come back up with your RAM drive intact between the two. So you could do something like that.
Now,
you could have your sound files still stay there too.
Did or does NitrOS-9 do any type of virtual memory page file type stuff?
Not in the traditional sense. There was somebody had done something where it actually would swap some stuff to disk. It ran pretty slow from what I remember. I mean,
because one really weird thing that I never understood back in the days of like Windows 3.11 was, you had that RAM drive that Microsoft gave us. And so everybody had this smart drive, whatever it was. So everybody had this brilliant idea. Hey, let's create a big fat RAM drive, and then let's tell Windows to use its page file in the RAM drive. But I'm sitting here thinking, why couldn't Windows just use the RAM? Why did I never quite put those two dots together. It's like putting virtual RAM inside real RAM. Why couldn't we just use RAM? And this is off topic from OS-9, but I'm just trying to think what other than obviously RAM is faster than disk. So if you offloaded all your commands, directories, and all your OS stuff and to run from RAM, even G Shell would probably run faster, right? So
first off, Steve, remember Windows 3.0 actually had 3 different modes. It had the real mode, which would run on an 8086, a 286 mode, and a 386 mode. So if you had a 386 and you're running in one of the other modes, could potentially have resources that weren't normally available. Windows 3.1, I think, would still do 286 mode, if I remember right. So, if you had a system that was way beyond the capabilities of the basic Windows stuff, you might want to put stuff in a RAM drive.
Yeah. But so RAM drive, obviously the obvious benefit is going to speed things up, right?
Yeah. And to be honest, most people, when they had large amounts of RAM, would create RAM drives for the temporary files that the assembler uses or temporary files that the C compiler uses, because there's a lot of
tools were disk based, unlike
yeah, and you would tell it, go to the RAM drive for all that stuff. Don't hit my hard drive, or even worse yet, my floppy drive.
Yeah.
Dog slow.
And again, that's a holdover because of old tools that did stuff an old way.
Yeah.
That's
what we used
to 64 megabytes.
Scratch files, they're called.
What was that, Paul? About 64 megabytes?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Actually, I was going to go bigger to 128, but I didn't quite get there.
So, but I think, so if you answered the question, Curtis, that the most physical, direct, contiguous RAM that OS-9 could talk to is 2 megs?
Yeah, because that fits MMU numbers into 1 byte.
Okay.
You have 256 8K blocks, which equals 2 meg.
Okay.
You could write extensions to the operating system, but then you start after writing double bytes to switch an MMU or even more.
Right. So at that point, at that point, the engineering time and the performance loss outweigh the benefit, right? So,
well, maybe we have to experiment to see if it does. It would definitely slow down multitasking somewhat.
But so honestly, the fact is 2 megs should this is like when the old saying, who needs more than 64K? But 2 megs, should 2 megs be enough for most of us, even power users? Would 2 megs keep David Ladd happy?
Yeah, no, 512K actually, for the most part, kind of solved the problem. 128 is too little. That's one of the reasons that the EoU, unlike regular G Shell, doesn't even try. It did some really crippling things. Like if you did an overlay window on 128K, on 512K, it'll preserve the under part of the window so that it can restore it very quickly once you pull the overlay window off. In 128K, it has to do it the old-fashioned way where it goes, you don't have enough memory for that. It has to redraw the entire screen every time. So like little things like that. But 512K you can run comfortably. Now we're getting like large sound files and more complicated, graphics games that might have 200, 300K worth of graphics, shapes and stuff for different levels, and you have sound samples you want to play in the background stuff too. 512K can start to shrink it down a bit too. So 2 meg, you should be comfortable.
Trina K has just joined us. Hello, Trina.
How do you quit OS-9? If you're back to the text shell, how do you quit? Is there a shutdown command?
You mean to quit back to RS-DOS?
Yeah, or just exit, shut everything down properly.
But there's nothing really to shut down properly, quote unquote.
Okay, so nothing.
Back in the day, you had the park command. You'd park the hard drive and then you'd.
No, it's a physical.
There's no graceful way to shut. So now it says power. You power switch it.
There is official ways to shut it down. If you hit reset twice, it'll kick you back to disk basic. If you hit reset once, it'll leave just the kernel track and then reload the operating system from that point. Okay. Which means it reloads all the graphics drivers and hard drive drivers and all that stuff. The only thing that keeps around is the initial memory management part. So if you're going a bit snaky, you can just hit reset and reboot a lot faster because it doesn't have to reload everything from scratch.
Gotcha.
So what can we look forward to next? What do you think your next release will include?
There's some more speed ups coming.
Okay.
I didn't quite finish the speed ups for the 609. There's a couple things on the hardware tech screens for the 6309. I think I can speed up a little bit too. So that'll be going in. Bill's working on some extensions to the windowing thing to create some new types of windows. I will fix these bottom 8 lines not being accessible from the joystick or mouse.
Okay.
I'm going to try to get Nick and Sock's high-res interface software version built in so that you can do the full resolution instead of every 8 pixels. I'm going to try to get that done for the next release. The gimme sparkly bugs, I'm going to try to fix that. I got to try to figure out what they did with the clock drivers because it was tied into that and it kind of got broke at some point.
How about clock?
What about clock?
Real-time clock. That has to be a hardware thing.
Well, that's dependent on what hardware clock chip you've got or whether you're running it through DriveWire or whatever. So there's.
What's the most common chip that people use or that we should use? Or
I don't know for these days. I know Jim Brain was kind of asking that, and I've been out of the community enough. I don't know what people are running for hardware. I think a lot of people are just running the DriveWire based one, which basically just takes it off your PC or your Mac or whatever you've got.
And that seems like that should be the easiest way, right?
Yeah. If you have a DriveWire setup, yeah.
DriveWire.
The hard drive controller in VCC is Cloud9 real-time clock. So I assume there's support for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So what have we not asked you about this, Curtis? Has this been a good...
questions in chat or anywhere else? I haven't actually been able to...
There's been a lot of stuff in chat. Yeah, it's hard for me to keep up with. So more optimizations. Ultimately, you will have where
bug fixes is the big thing because there's bug fixes like the gimme glitching. There's bugs with if you're page flipping, you can't leave the page flipping windows. It traps you in there until you end that program. The 200 line mouse thing, like there's quite a few bugs we're still trying to fix too. Those are going to be my first concentration because I want to get it running smoothly. And then I'm speeding up while I'm going through it because I have to go through the same part of the code when I'm trying to do the bug fixes. And then installing some of the other games. G-Shell's got a ton of things that have to be changed to allow running VDG-based programs, to allow you to better control the palette, to let you set a font and the default directories and stuff for a program within the AF file itself, because right now it doesn't have any support for that. Right now it's also limited to printing the name of the module that you're running, which may not be the name of the program, because some people like name a program FF and it actually means file find or something like that. I want to change it so you can actually have it display a different name than the actual name of the module is, so you can make it more English like when you're looking on the screen, like here's the file find program with an FF, what the heck does that do again? That type of thing. So there's a lot of little things. I want to incorporate some right mouse clicking stuff for like renaming files instead of having to click the file once selected, going up to the files menu, going down to rename. So, more modernize it that way too. So there's just a ton of stuff.
Neat. And the hard deadline for all this is now December 31st before New Year's Eve.
I'm not making any promises. 1 month is too little.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely come a long way from alpha to now. And now that it's out in public, and now that you've posted it, like you say, you've posted it on Facebook, you've posted it on the mailing list, you've posted it in Discord. So for those who want to get a copy of this, you're going to download it from the link from Curtis's website.
Yeah. It's actually on a web page now. It used to be FTP only up until this release, which some people
I posted a link a
right.
little bit.
And there's a 6809 version, there's a 6309 version. You unzip it. If you're going to run it off the CoCo SDC, you just mount the virtual hard drive and you boot it and you're up and running. If you're running it on VCC, you have to run the floppy disk first to be able to mount the hard drive.
Yeah, you have to mount both. You mount the floppy drive, the disk image, and then you mount the VHD under the hard disk option in VCC.
Oh, you got to mount both, and then you type in DOS from the floppy disk to kick it off.
Yeah, which loads in the hard drive driver for VCC, and then it runs.
Now, is that only VCC, or do you have to do that in MAME too?
I think I think the floppy driver is needed in MAME too, if I remember. Because it still needs that hard drive.
Okay, so you have to. So if you're running an emulator, you have to mount the floppy and the hard drive, and the floppy is kind of what connects the dot to the hard drive. However, CoCo SDC is giving us the luxury of just booting straight to the hard drive.
Yeah.
Okay, so the preferred way to run this would be on CoCo SDC on real hardware to experience ease of use and all of its power.
Yeah, and if you have a 609, definitely get the 609 version. It is noticeably faster, as you saw from the video.
Don't do like what I did and download the wrong dumbass version because I'm an idiot.
Well, that's okay in this case because that was the one that had the most improvement this time.
Okay.
The old demo was a fair bit
faster.
faster.
Yeah, well, I meant to do that then. So
yeah, exactly.
It might seem faster than 512 also, for whatever reason. I tried the 6309 version on VCC, and then I switched to 2 megs and rebooted. It's like, wow, G-Cell comes up faster. Seemed to.
Hey, Curtis, when I try to format a floppy, it's 3.5-inch drive.
Okay.
Is there a way to change that, or it's not easy? Or
What do you mean? Like what?
Like
Are
drive
you doing it from G shell or from the command line?
D0. If I hit in the GUI, I hit format D0. You know, it comes up with text that says it's a 3.5-inch drive, and it wants to do 80 sectors.
Yeah, that means the default floppy descriptor we've got for that drive when you boot must be set to 80 or 80 track. You're not using an 80 track drive then, or?
No, I have regular floppies I want to use.
5 1/4.
Yeah.
I mean, there's two ways to tackle that. I mean, once this is fully released and you can customize the boot to your own, you would just change the device descriptor in your boot to say this drive is.
So I have to be smart enough to do that then.
Well, there's an easier way to do it right now built in too. There's a command called D mode. Disk mode is what it stands for, and you can set those settings yourself.
Okay, I'll go look it up
on the fly. And if you type help D mode, it'll give you a little bit of help. You can type D mode space / whatever the name of your drive is, which I think you said was D0 you were trying.
Yeah.
And it'll give you what the current settings on that drive are, like how many sectors per track, how many tracks you got, how many sides is double-sided or single-sided. And you can just type D mode and then /D0 and then change whatever parts you need to change for your particular drive. And then it'll work fine from G shell. You'll format as a 40 track or a single-sided or double-sided, whatever your drive is.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Well, this has been a great day of OS-9. And all days should be this good. All days should include this much OS-9 discussions. Yes. I think we should mention maybe one. We had a few things to talk about in the news, which we'll share one of them real quick. So number one, for those of you not aware, the latest episode of the CoCoCREW podcast has dropped. So make sure you listen to that, CoCoCREW.org, or subscribe to it on your favorite podcast app, whatever that may be. But another thing that has come up is that they are looking to enlist another community roundtable. And they've done this a few times where they invite people to come on and take part in a discussion that will air on the next episode. So since we are now, the November episode just dropped. We're now in December. I would imagine they would be recording this, and then it will appear at the end of the month in a December episode. So it looks like he's saying here, December is here, so it's time for another community roundtable discussion on the CoCoCREW podcast. Whether you are nearly a newbie or you're a Coco nut from way back, maybe you would like to join us for some discussions on the ongoing state of the Coco community. So they're looking at around December 15th. So I think they're looking for people to want to, kind of RSVP to be part of that discussion, as have all been good in the past. So just so you know, that's actually on the CoCoCREW podcast Facebook group. I'm sure it's also been shared out on some of the other Facebook groups. So check that out if you're interested in joining that roundtable discussion. Please do. And
Steve, have you had a chance to listen to the latest?
I just started listening to it last night, so it only just dropped like yesterday, right? It just came out. Yeah, so I just started listening last night, so I haven't gotten too far. I think I've gotten into just some of the events they've been talking about, and maybe the beginning of the news. That's about as far as I got. I was listening while I was waiting on people to join our test call that we're doing last night. My Florida Retro group wanted to try to have virtual meetings, and so I said, well, we could try it on my little Zoom thing here. So while I was waiting for people to show up, I was listening then last night. Excuse me. Ooh. All right.
I'm just waiting to see if you go through the entire tech talk by John on stacks.
Oh, okay.
How fast your eyes glaze over.
If my head explodes or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see. I'll let you know. Let's real quick. I bet we pull it up and let's we'll pull up the show notes just so we know what we can look forward to this month. So if I go back to, I know they were going to do their own Tandy assembly recap or something, but if we go to CoCoCREW.org, here's the episode, and you can actually search the show notes now, which is a nice feature. But so this is episode 42. So here's the show notes. So what can we look forward to? What are the segments we have here? So they talk about some events that are going on, right? And then we get into the news, which I don't remember how far I got into the news. So, but there's a super sack race made the news. So a bunch of stuff going on there. And then we have feedback. So Davey Mitchell gave some feedback. So there's a Tandy assembly recap that takes place at 1 hour and 7 minutes that lasts roughly 14 minutes, because then we get into a host discussion. We have a host discussion is a good story better than the hard facts. Not quite sure I understand where that's going, but I guess we'll find out when we hear that one.
That's basically about, are you supposed to correct somebody if they're not quite remembering something historic quite accurately type thing?
Okay.
Like, you call them out on it and maybe come across as a jerk, or do you just kind of slough it off as being, well, they probably just don't remember because it was like,
well, yeah, okay. So I'm going to give you an example. So number one, I don't know how many of you have kids, but I think probably most of us would not be a fan of having our kids correct us, right? It's just kind of a rude thing to do, right? Listen, you little shit, I'm your parent, and how dare you talk to me, right? I know better than you. But another thing is, even when Allan was on earlier, I think he had said something about, well, he had said a year twice, and the second time he said the year, I think he said the different, like he said 89 instead of 79 or something like that, and you kind of knew what he meant. So when it's just a faux pas and you correct somebody, that to me, that is kind of pointless. But if somebody is completely off and now you try to do it politely, I guess, right? So I guess that is kind of a slippery slope, right? So that should be interesting. And so then the actual tech segment itself is, what is a CPU stack? And that runs from about 1 hour 40 to about 2:10. So you got about a half hour there of listening to what a stack is. And then we have Neil's Corner. Frankie, is that a game? Or is that we're talking about? Okay.
That's Frank. It's a game.
All right. So so here's the show notes. So here's just a little bit of what you can expect in this month's CoCoCREW podcast. So make sure you check that out and give them a listen. Give a listen to that other show, that other CoCoCREW show, that other CoCo show, I should say, right? So very, very cool. All right.
Let me say on Ron's Garage, if you're interested to try, if you have a XPad, I put a version of CoCo Max on there that uses the XPad, and I have pictures of me using mine. So if you want to try it, there's a CoCo Max program that you can download in the files area.
So what did you pay for your XPad, by the way?
Say it again.
What did you pay for your XPad? I know you and Chet.
Oh, I got it with a group of stuff I bought years ago. It came with all my stuff.
All right, so this is Ron's Garage group on Facebook, and so what you're saying is you had time from your busy schedule to post something to Facebook this week, Ron?
Once or twice.
Okay, here we go.
There's some pictures I drew on the XPad.
So you basically you hand drew these, right?
Yes.
And what kind of crappy car is that right there?
Well, what do you think it
is? That a Chevy? Is that a Chevy?
Yeah, right.
Ron, did you ever get it to work on a CoCo3 even at regular speed, or no?
Just wanted to play with old retro Model 2 CoCo stuff.
Okay. Does your XPad run CoCo Max?
No, it does not run on 3.
Not even running regular speed or anything. Okay, it just doesn't run.
It doesn't. It won't come up. The software won't come up.
Okay, so this was basically a still life here, right? Where you actually put up a floppy and drew the floppy. So you needed the real thing there for inspiration.
Yes.
It's like you can't draw a bowl of fruit without having the bowl of fruit in front of you.
Try and draw a floppy without looking at it.
You start off with pretty much a square.
Yeah. Is the hole directly in center, or is it down a little bit?
Yeah, well, you could use some artistic license, and make the floppy how you in your own vision.
It's like driving a car with square tires.
Neat. So these are hand drawn, and you've actually put up on Ron's Garage the link to download that. So is that under the file sections here? So we have XPad DCC
Yep,
XMS. Okay, so so people can download the disk image to have the XPad version of this if you want to hand draw. I actually am feeling inspired to do that.
You know, it's a whole different thing when you're drawing with limited palette. You know, you don't really have a whole lot of colors. When I drew the fruit, I couldn't make the banana yellow. I had to pick something that was close to yellow, so it was orange.
Does it give you the dither patterns where you could do like the red and white checkers to look lighter?
Yeah, that's what I did with there's a tomato there, and I made that with lines, and it looks like a deeper red.
Yeah.
Which it isn't.
Right.
There, yeah. And it's supposed to be
broccoli, green broccoli.
Broccoli, exactly.
Yeah.
There's no green, so.
Chopping broccoli. Yeah.
Dithering.
Yes.
Dithering.
You do what you can do.
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat.
So you really have to think, you know, when you're drawing, you have to think, how am I gonna make this look good? You know, or like putting the little reflection on the apple.
Yeah.
Just one click of the eraser.
Yeah. There you go. Your little shiny spot.
Even Hugo DeFort's mentioned that, like when he was designing the icons that we've shown before on his upcoming game, he said, you know, the limitation of 16 colors, you know, compared to what Nintendo or something else has, and some of the tricks he did to draw stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's Ron's. Okay, so this was my high score.
Yes.
And this is the one that Ron did, where he got 842,910. Ron is a video game beast.
And I also put more dots coming down so you wouldn't guess.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just saw it. I didn't put two and two together. I'm like, man, Ron, that's amazing. Now somebody else has posted that. Now I got to say, this was really fun playing this game. It was really. We did it the other night, and maybe I wouldn't mind doing it again tonight if we're doing After Dark or something. But I really enjoyed playing the game, and it took a while. It took probably an hour and 45 minutes into my 2 hours to really get into the groove of knowing the screens. And even if you know where everything is and you've figured out the mechanics and you've gotten your physical reflexes finally, you know, in that zone, the whole random factor of this game still makes it challenging. You know, so the more I played, the more I could breeze through the earlier rounds because it became a little bit more familiar, but that challenge factor of not knowing when the drop of acid's going to drop, and you know, freaking bouncing ball and stupid effing bat, you know. So it was a fun game to play, and I would like us to do more things like that where we can just get together, especially for the people who can share their screen. I know like Jason has done it in the past, or even just point your camera at your screen and get a bunch of us playing the game together and see how we can do.
Now, if you do an After Dark game thing tonight, would that be with Downline again or a different game?
We could. I mean, I actually would like to go further in this game because somebody did post in Facebook group that they got to level 8, and there were some scores posted that were pretty high, and somebody mentioned he made it to Cavern 8 or whatever it's called. So I would like to possibly play that again. I think that would be, you know, kind of like what we started with Dagrath, how I've gotten to level 4 of the dungeon. It's kind of like these are some of the life goals, you know, the games you never beat. So beating Dagrath, making it to Cavern 9, and so apparently, spoiler alert, it's already been put out there on Facebook. When you walk out of Cavern 9, it just takes you back to Cavern 0 again. So completely anti-clim. Oh, it makes it harder because the game is a real freaking walk in the park the first time through, right? So,
well, you know the acid drops where if you're on the rope, they'll go down either side of you.
Yeah.
On the later chambers, you'll actually get a few where the acid drops are close, and you have to actually push off and hang off the side of the rope.
Son of a bitch. Yeah,
when it wraps around, almost all of them are like that, from what I heard. I haven't got that far myself, but
yeah. If I could just make it to Cavern 9, and you know that would be good enough for me. Because to me, that game's not about. It's not. Listen, if you have a good score, great. But to me, it's more about the completing the screens. Yeah, you know, than what actual points. Because chasing diamonds and money bags is you're going to waste time when you only have so much time before the effing bat comes out, right? So.
Yeah.
You know,
like I suggested last time we were doing Downland, one I would like to see you try again now that you actually have real joysticks, because way back when you last played,
you're talking about the Contras, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because the second button, I think you couldn't fire diagonally.
Yeah.
Your Xbox controller and stuff, I think you could do a lot better.
Yeah, maybe we can do a gaming marathon tonight. Well, I'm sorry, Ron, what were you going to say?
Well, when I was younger and I had my CoCo set up and I played games on occasion, which I didn't play a whole lot, but when I did play, my son was young and he would come by, Dad. I'm trying to play the game, and he's Dad. Drove me nuts. You play it. He did pretty good as a little kid, I must say.
Yeah, kids seem to do a little better.
They're nimble.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so have we beat this one to death?
Oh, probably.
All right. Okay, so I guess we can reconvene in Discord later if we want to do an After Dark. If we do an After Dark, it'll be same channel, probably same time, 9 p.m.-ish. Nick Marentes, did you have a core dump or anything else you wanted to share with us this week? Bueller? I'm not sure if Nick's muted.
He's so excited by NitrOS-9 now that when we're talking about RS games, he got bored and
he's
fell asleep,
speechless.
so.
He's been speechless.
I'm back now. Sorry, I was falling asleep.
Yeah, I was right. He started talking about RS-DOS games and he just fell asleep. He's so enamored with NitrOS-9 now.
Yeah.
Just doesn't keep him excited.
Have you been drawing pictures with your CoCo Max?
No. I haven't had much time, but yeah.
Are you going to?
Oh, not with the old. No. I mainly do programming on the CoCo under the real operating system, RS Basic.
RS Basic. Ease of use.
Not all the other flip-flap of OS-9. No.
So did you have a core dump for us or anything else you wanted to share or update with us?
No, I think I had my own core dump during the OS-9 session, but
TMI.
No, but seriously, no, that was a good OS-9 session. But no, I don't have anything, no.
All right, well, this one's in the bag. Any closing thoughts, parting thoughts, words of wisdom?
Are you going to count this episode 85 as a real episode?
Yeah, why wouldn't
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Because it was OS-9? Is that what we're gonna oh, okay. You're gonna hide it?
It won't be Nick's list.
It'll be our dirty little secret that we all enjoyed OS-9 today.
Really?
The only thing I'd like to say is that everybody go out, download whatever's appropriate for your machine, the 609 version, 639 version, now that it's more easily accessible, and please send feedback. You can send it through the Facebook comments. You can send it through Discord. If you're on the bit listserv CoCo that Dennis Kitts runs, the email server, then please send it there. But definitely want some feedback. I've already had one report that I kind of already knew about, but it reminded me of a bug I've got to fix on how I've got the icon set up for Mac Pictures versus Mac Sound files.
Okay.
Please feedback, and if you have any questions, if you want to, some tips on programming, if you want to try Basic 09 and start writing your own arcade games using the faster graphics, feel free to ask.
Okay. Diego, did you have anything you wanted to tell us this week?
No, it's just that that's what I've been doing. Right now, I actually downloaded it, started on VCC, and I'm trying to remember how you got into writing Basic 09. So yeah, I'm starting a new game, and maybe I'll give it a shot. See if once I finally get into.
Feel free to ask me any questions. Are you in Discord or?
Yep. I have an account there. Don't go very often, but.
Okay, because there's a NitrOS-9 EoU group. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask me or Bill, then fire away.
And now you have a good reason to.
Yeah. Now, have you added a Discord client to the EoU beta 2?
Not yet.
Okay. That'd be
but
beta.
through the DriveWire stuff, that might be possible. I don't know.
Right. Maybe beta 3 will have it. So, did Mark Overholzer anything you want to update us on?
Nope. Sorry, I've been busy at work, not doing anything practical.
Okay.
So.
And Ron Delvaux, we've seen your artwork, and we have a download of that. So
it was a busy day for me. Appreciate, in short notice, having this guy come on and all.
Well, man, it was great. It was great. It really was.
I never even thought of asking him. Like I've through emails and stuff. I've talked to Allan for 20 years. I mean, like I said during the show, interviewing him, that we used to put some of our distribution patches and upgrades for NitrOS-9 on his FTP server. So we've been using that since the 90s, and I never even thought to interview him. Sorry.
Yeah. Brian Weisler, anything you want to share with us? I saw you got a new shiny silver CoCo 1.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when I came across that one there, and I messaged the guy, and he really didn't have a lot of hits on it at all there through the Craigslist, and the picture really did not do it justice until I actually went to go pick it up at his house, and was really surprised at the condition that it was in. I mean, really the only thing, kind of unfortunate, but not a big deal. It's missing one of the rubber feet on the bottom there, but other than that, there's hardly any blemishes on it at all.
It looked pristine.
Yeah, I even shined the flashlight in the inside there, and the system board's all nice and shiny and everything too. So it's got a desk cover stored in the garage. Yeah, like I put in the comments, the person was ready to chuck it in the trash because they figured,
wow, nobody wants this.
Yeah, they bought it. Well, they bought it for their son a long time ago, and he never did anything with it. And they're doing some house cleaning, and it's like, well, what are we gonna do with this? And he just happened to be over there, and he's like, well, here, let me throw it on Craigslist for you. So.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you guys, we did a very spontaneous Florida Retro Club meeting last night, but there's a new member in the club. His name is David Rosa. He's down in South Florida. Kid's 14 years old, and he's a retro collector. And he's already got more stuff than probably most of us put together right now, except for maybe the exception of Ron Delvaux. But he has got so many systems, and he's, and he's becoming like a historian at 14, just collecting all these old systems. But he got an Apple IIe system that looks almost brand new and has everything: the monitors, the double wide disk drive thing, and a numeric keypad, and all kinds of stuff. And whoever owned it was the original owner. It was kept indoors in an air conditioned room the whole time. So there's this, like, it's a complete time capsule thing that he got. I mean, when you get something like that in that condition, it's such a cool thing, Cool stuff. And so Nick Marentes, I forgot what you said. Were you good, Nick? Nothing else to update us on? And no core dumps or project updates, anything like that? Okay. Yeah, he's muted again. And Steve Bjork, you got a new t-shirt? No.
Yeah, I got a new t-shirt.
And you got the MPI on the way.
Yeah, probably be here Monday.
Excellent. We're looking forward to seeing that and possibly even hearing that. So, if we're able
with that T-shirt there, I was while we were chatting there, I went ahead and ordered one of those. When you go to the website, they have a thing you can click on to get a 15% discount.
Right.
So, yep.
Excellent. So, listen, Radio Shack, you gotta support whatever Radio Shack is right now, I guess, right? So, Neat. So anything else to you want to share with the folks, Steve Bjork, before we wrap this up?
Nope. We'll eventually get back to doing the assembly language lessons as soon as my life gets back to normal.
Okay. Excellent. We look forward to those. I'll continue
we'll
to try to...
Bill Gates wants to show up.
Yeah. Ron Delvaux is this guy. He's got direct access to the A-list. I get Bill on here. All right, get him to set if we get Bill Gates on, then we need to also get Brother Jeremy on here for an update of his song saying "Let the ROMs free." We'll get a new song. We'll get the ROMs released, and then we can start making
Bill the 640K award.
Yeah. Honestly, if anybody could make a CoCo Mini Classic, it could be Microsoft because they own the ROMs, So,
never thought of it that way.
Yeah. So, matter of fact, I'm actually looking forward to one now. So, because I do IT for a living, I've got Barracuda Networks wants me to do some type of demo with them on their management platform. If I agree to their webinar, I'm going to get a PlayStation Mini Classic as my gift for doing their webinar. So I'm like, shoot, I'll listen to whatever you have to say for a half hour to get a free PlayStation Mini Classic. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. So in the meantime, we have the Raspberry Pi. That's our closest thing to a CoCo Mini Classic right now, but who knows? And then of course you've got like your Misters and your Matchbox CoCos and your FPGAs. So there are things out there. All right, so we're going to put a fork in this one. It's done. 3.5 hours. I believe the world has gotten enough OS-9 for one day. But if you need more, Yeah, if you need more, just press the clear key, open up a new terminal, and you can get even more. You can multitask.
And then do format/Nick.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up. I'm not going to even bother with the closing credits or anything like that. Just everybody, final thoughts, final words, and we're going to press the button, Frank. Nick
Download
Marotta.
and test it out.
Download and test it out. Nick Marotta.
Marotta.
Yeah, Nick Marotta. All right. Well, we're going to press the button, Frank. Thank you all for the 20. We've been holding fast at about 25 viewers consistent the whole time. So OS-9 was a hit with at least 25 people on the planet. So thank you all for being here.
Just posted a message to the CoCo mailing list that we'll have the video up shortly in case.
Yep. So we've had Nick Marotta in the live chat. We've had David Ladd in the live chat. Mark Overholzer, Ken Reichert has been here. Al Hartman has been here. Curtis Boyle was here. Salvador Garcia, John Linville. We've got a motor vehicle in the background there. Nick Marotta, Salvador, Steve Bjork, John Linville, Ken Reichert, Jay Brevin, and Steve Bjork, and Rob Inman was in the live chat. Dragon Bites. Well, who is Dragon Bites? I know his name is also Lord Dragon, but a guy's got a real name, right? Who is he? Help me understand who Dragon Bites and Lord Dragon is to his God-given name. Nick Marotta, Mark D. Overholzer, Salvador, Jay Brevin, James Jones was out here. Grant Leedy came by. Tom C. was here. Grant Leedy had to work today. James Jones. A lot of James Jones chat out there. Jason Downs was out here asking about the Gimme Sparkles. A lot of Nick Marotta out there. Jason Downs. Mark Bosley was in the live chat. The list goes on, right? So Rob Inman. Chet Simpson was out there for a little while talking about some stuff he had going on. What's that?
Simon Jonasson dropped by for a bit.
Simon Jonasson dropped by. Trina Kay was here saying hi, everyone. Simon Jonasson was here. So, yeah, thank you all for hanging fast. And we're going to press the button now. I just want to say, Grant Leedy, without you, we would be nothing. So take care, everybody. Say goodbye. Everybody say goodbye to Nick Marotta.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right. So we are going to press the button on the live stream in 3, 2, 1. Oh, and OO Jamma Philippus says stalking. Okay. Thank you. You're too kind. All right. Bye-bye.